Welcome to the Sent and Bent podcast. Today is the last day we have Will before he leaves us for 2 weeks. I just realized I did not think it was that long.
Yeah. And he's going to Central America, so, you know.
Yeah. We're hoping he comes back. So we're going to go over that today, and we're going to finally get around to telling the entire legacy of Ethan's old truck, because there are a truly fascinating amount of stories that happen with that thing, and I'm sure that I don't even know half of them, because a lot of things happened when I wasn't here too.
Yeah. I mean, most of the stories involved you, because the stories happened when we were doing, you know, grind hard trips and stuff. But
when you're hanging out with Shrek people, Shrek type things tend to happen.
I think every time we drove that truck, a story was made. Because
just about.
Especially at the very end of its life, every time you would take it out, there'd be a little thing. Ethan was like, well, if you twist the key this way, that way, and then hit the brake really hard this way, then you'll drive straight for a while.
The great thing is that I sold that to Edwin's brother-in-law's friend, and he still drives it, and I don't think he's even put tires on it. I bought that truck, and I owned it for 5 years and never put tires on it. They were the tires that it came with, and I'm pretty sure, what's that guy's name? That doesn't matter. Anyway, he bought it, and I'm pretty sure it still has the same tires.
What are the origin stories of that thing? Where did it come from originally?
I was doing construction out of my Subaru wagon.
Good choice. That's what you were doing when I met you.
Yeah. So I once hauled all the flooring for my house upstairs and downstairs in the back of my Subaru. Nice. I even had the truck at that point. I just happened to be in town with the Subaru and didn't calculate. It was 1,200 pounds of flooring in the back of it. And I had the dogs too, so I put them on top of the flooring was basically up at the ceiling. And the dogs were just No, but I just bought that truck because I really needed a truck for doing construction, because I wasn't framing for somebody else. I was doing my own thing, just building sheds for people and remodeling their houses and stuff. So I needed to haul plywood and stuff routinely. Yeah. So I just looked around. Well, back then it was really Craigslist. Facebook Marketplace wasn't much of a thing yet. But
back in the day when you could buy cars on Craigslist.
What kind of a world would that be?
Where Craigslist was actual listings from actual people instead of 600,000 of the same ad from the same dealer.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I just looked around for a while. I wasn't really dead set on any specific truck. I was just looking for a cheap truck. I didn't have a lot of money, so anything cheap that would haul stuff. So it needed to be a long bed, and that was pretty much it. So I ended up with a 99 Chevy Silverado single cab. I mean, everybody who's watched the channel for a while has seen it, but it was a great truck. It was I bought it for $3,200. It had 217,000 miles on it when I got it. But it had reasonably new tires that I never had to replace. And it was clean, it was well taken care of, and it was a good little truck. So, but yeah, it was a 3/4 ton. So it had the 6-liter LS and I don't know, what would that probably be, a 4L80E transmission, if anyone cares.
Before you had the truck, you were towing your snowmobiles with jank little trailers behind your Subaru, right?
Yeah, I did that too. You know the trailer that was the one on the Overland that we modified for the Overland trip?
Yeah, we put the roof tent on.
Yeah, and then we totally destroyed it.
Yeah.
I used to put one of my Yamaha phasers onto that trailer and tow it behind my Subaru. The snowmobile would be hanging off the back of the trailer. The skis were kind of sticking out the front a little bit, and just tow it around with my Subaru. I only did that a couple times.
Situation. See that Subaru roll by with a.
I always wanted to build a roof rack with a ramp so I could just drive it on top of the Subaru.
That would be sick.
We should still do that.
Well, I don't have a Subaru anymore.
Volvo wagon, so we can drift it.
Yeah,
we could do it with Will's new Honda.
Yes,
I've seen a picture of not because I had old Yamaha phasers, but I've seen a picture of a full size mountain sled on top of a Honda Civic.
Really?
Yeah. Somebody just
I've seen one with the sad boy Hondas where it was a sad boy Honda recovery vehicle, and it was a Honda with normal tires on it with a ramp that went on top of the Honda, and then they'd stack them up there.
What the heck?
Away like Beatles.
That sounds sweet.
Yeah, it does.
But yeah, back to the truck. So I mean that's where it came about, and I used it for that for a few years until we started doing grind hard, and then we used it for trips from pretty much day one. Once we let's see, we picked up the Tacoma with it. It's been around since literally day one.
The fun begins, because the very first grind hard conversation is when I had the pink Power Wheels in the back of my truck, and then we were snowmobiling, and you had the snowmobiles in your truck.
It wasn't even in the back of your truck. You were borrowing your mom's Suburban or whatever, so you had the pink Power Wheels like in the back seat of a Tahoe or whatever it was. It was. I don't know why you weren't driving your truck that day, but yeah, we were snowmobiling. So yeah, I had two snowmobiles in the bed of my truck, like both of them in the bed, and then the third one. Wait. We would have had 3 snowmobiles that day.
Yeah, they were crammed in there.
I don't remember. Yeah, whatever it was, they were jam-packed.
They were just so jammed in there, and I remember seeing like, I don't know if I've seen a specialty loading situation quite like that. And that's the first thing I ever remember of your truck.
Yeah.
And I probably got more and more crazy from there as we started doing Grind Hard.
Yeah, and then we did, when we turboed the Barbie car, and then we took it out and we met Steve Hessick with his drift trike, with his KTM 300 drift trike on the beach in Oregon. We took my truck on that. And before that, when we bought that M3, BMW M3, we had the Barbie car on the trailer on the way. Oh, that was the same trip. We had the Barbie car on the trailer. Like, we had a full-size trailer with only the original Barbie car right in the middle of it.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. And then on the way...
Stew sticking out the hood. You would have loved it,
Will. And then on the way back, we picked up the BMW M3 to flip, and we obviously we just put the Barbie car in the bed of the truck at that point. But yeah, that was a good trip.
Yeah, that was so good because we did the North Idaho dyno. That was the first North Idaho dyno, right? We strapped that thing to a pole when we got the turbo going, because it was like without any load. Ethan was like, I mean, it's spooling, but I don't know if it's doing anything or not. So what are we gonna do? And I was really concerned that we were just gonna pull the whole wall down in the old garage, because it's like these.
It was a pretty janky old.
Do you know how old those poles are holding up your garage?
I don't know. I could ask some of my neighbors who were around when that was built, but I've always estimated it was probably built in like the 70s or early 80s.
I thought it was just gonna pull this thing down.
I would too, dude. Strapping to anything on that, I'd be worried.
But he fired up those turbos, man. And it was spitting flames, and it was just stewing, and I was like, this is probably the best day I've ever had.
And I think that was the only time it ever actually made boost.
Yeah, so then we drove it all the way to Oregon, took it on the beach, and that just turned into a bad situation quickly. Like,
oh yeah, we got salt water in it, and then we just deturboed it and ripped around without the turbo for a while.
We were like so prepped, all the cameras, drones,
This was how it goes.
Our first time like actually having all that stuff, because we'd still kind of just started the channel. And then Ethan does this big pull, and this bigger tide than usual came in, and it just ruled. The water just went straight into the intake, and then it was like, Gah!
Well, and not only that, but it was just running like crap anyway. Like, we hadn't really tested enough, and that one time doing the burnout in the shop, it made all the right spoolie noises, and it clearly had more power, and it never did again. It never made more power ever when we actually drove it. So like on the beach, it was like, it looked turboed, but it was just like, it was actually less power than without. So then we deturboed it, got it running a bit. And
then we bought another turbo, put it back on, and then we immediately sent a turbo fin into the valves, remember?
Yeah,
it testing it on the road by here.
Yeah, it just ate the turbo.
Ate the fin.
I think the nut backed off on the turbo, because it's like $150 turbo. It's not a good turbo.
Loose nuts, Alibaba.
And I was not a mechanic before Grind Hard in any way whatsoever. So this is the first time I've seen someone pull apart an engine, and it was still in the bed of Ethan's truck from when we recovered it. So he pulled off the head, and I was like, oh, nice. I've never seen anyone dig into an engine before. And he's like, here's our problem. And you don't need to be a rocket scientist to see a bunch of pieces of turbo fin mashed into a valve.
The engine was fine. It just needed the bits of turbo cleared out of there. And then
really?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was because it was the intake side of the turbo, the aluminum side, not the exhaust side.
Man.
Well, obviously the exhaust
Honda
side.
Power.
Well, the exhaust side couldn't possibly go into the engine because it's going out. It's after the engine. But anyway.
I feel like a turbo pieces in there just isn't a good thing, but just pulling it out.
That was another great day.
Well, I think chronologically, the next truck story is Steven's to tell.
Yes.
Oh yeah, that was early on.
It's all of our story, but I'll set the scene. I mean, Will wasn't there yet, but yeah. So single cab Chevy truck.
Yeah.
Me driving. Edwin on crutches.
Yeah.
Sam also went.
Oh, that's
and
right.
Steven. So
We
we
were
had
four
4
wide.
adults in a single cab truck.
And the reason I was on crutches
is because of the murder scooter.
of the machine we were testing
Yep.
at the dunes. And I was just ready for more.
Yeah. So
That's good.
yeah, we took it to the Moses Lake sand dunes, which are it's like a couple hours from here. They're really not very exciting sand dunes.
With the
but
crunchy taco too.
Yep, we
That's
took the
our support vehicle.
Yeah, well, to film with, we were like, and then it broke, and the scooter
That's
was
still one of my favorite pictures I've ever taken. Is you on crutches, Edwin, with that truck with the tire all like
the whole
cattywampus
what
to the
broke on that? The whole tire was like yoink.
Oh, it was the ball joint. Because we before we went to Moab, we replaced it with those cheap ball joints, and
classic
there was a little
problem.
Yeah, and it stripped the bolts out,
Yeah.
but.
Oh no!
So I was wearing snow pants. It was so cold.
Oh, it was
wasn't
so cold
snowing.
that day.
I was wearing snow pants, a jacket, and I was like in my crutches, and we were just waiting by the truck for like someone to realize that we weren't following them anymore. And so Steven got this amazing picture of me.
I've seen that photo. That's
Yeah.
a
It's a
early
banger.
on our Instagram. If
Yeah.
you really dig, you can find that. But
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
before I
Yeah.
actually worked for Grind Hard.
Yeah.
I was just along for the ride to take a few photos.
Yeah, and so was Sam. That was even before Sam ever worked with us.
Oh, really?
That was
Yeah.
just,
Wow.
you guys both just came for fun. And so anyway,
and we
were
had
there to
fun.
yeah.
we were there to test what became known as the murder scooter, which if anybody didn't watch it, because that was years ago,
It's murderous.
It was the Honda CRF 230 frame, or bits of it rather, the steering and forks, that donated its engine to the Barbie car with a spare Yamaha Phaser engine grafted onto the back and a big platform in the middle to stand on. So it was a stand-up scooter with 70 horsepower of two-stroke ridiculousness.
terrifying.
And it was like 8 feet long.
Doesn't it have like a little CVT or something?
Yeah, it's CVT drive.
It's terrifying.
Yeah, so that's why it was called the murder scooter. Anyway, that's what we were doing there at the dunes. We were testing that. All the testing went pretty well.
To this day, the most terrifying thing I've ever driven. And we've driven a lot of swindly machines since then.
Yeah, well, it's funny too because I don't even really drive a lot of the builds, and I don't. Well, I guess at that point I didn't have an opportunity.
Yeah, you hadn't. Yeah.
Still, no one should have thought it was a good idea to put me on that. And I just remember the last thing Ethan's saying is like, "Oh, the throttle's kind of sticky." So, and I don't really drive bikes.
Yeah, well, and I don't think any of us really realized to what extent you didn't drive bikes at that point.
Yeah, there's
Because
that
like
too.
when you and I
So
met, we were in
drunk,
college, and like
yeah,
we were just doing slacklining and rock climbing and all that kind of stuff.
right.
And so like at this point, it was early in Grind Hard, so we hadn't really like invited you over for a bunch of things.
And you're
like,
very confident in everything physical.
Exactly.
Like
So,
hiking,
yeah,
climbing.
I didn't have that much reason to believe that I was going to crash in the way that I did because that was jank. I seem to remember like being like, oh, maybe I should point it not kind of towards Ethan's truck.
so we were probably like we're sitting in the shed. We're probably maybe 30 feet away from the truck or so, pointed like basically parallel to it.
Yeah. How did the door was open? How
Yeah,
did I?
the door was
'cause I
open
hit
because
the door like
yeah, you hit it the edge of the door, like
Yeah.
dead on edge.
with my knees in my head.
Yeah. He was just like, if the truck is here, he's parallel to it. And then we're like, oh, yeah, just like once you get going fast, it's easier and it kind of balances itself out a little bit. And like, because it's really, really hard to drive slow. So it was like, just give it some beans. And he just goes straight into the open door, like car.
Full
but,
throttle.
like, kind of sideways.
Yeah.
So the bike didn't really hit the door. It was just
It was mainly my
Steven
knees and my head.
injecting himself into the door.
And then the door didn't close correctly after that. We had
Ever
to
again?
4 wide in the cab and like kind of like jimmy
Oh,
it
yeah,
shut.
Yeah, the
It
door
was-
always like once I started seeing the truck, the door always had to like kind of jimmy up. That's
Yeah,
what
that was after I shimmed it and
Yeah.
stuff. I had to adjust it a good bit,
yeah,
but
it still looked a little damaged.
because that day it would barely even close. Like it was just like a gap,
giant,
a huge air gap all the way around.
It was a cold drive back. I remember that.
It was extra
Yeah.
chilly.
I have a
Yeah.
feeling the last thing anyone's gonna hear at Grind Hard if they did die on a machine is Ethan saying the throttle's a little sticky, or me saying the brakes
don't
brakes
really
don't
work.
need the brakes yet.
There's enough back pressure.
It's fine. Just use the engine braking.
Yeah.
One of I think probably my favorite part of that day, I mean, aside from doing wheelies on the 8-foot-long scooter.
You did a wheelie on the
Yeah.
And he jumped it. He found this big, like, kind of dune cliff thingy. It was so crazy.
Yeah, like I did a wheelie where it was like not 12 o'clock, but like maybe 10:30.
And it was so long when you do a wheelie on that
I was like 4 feet off the ground, just like, whoa!
Yeah. Steven and I were sitting in the corner with our cameras, like getting the sunset behind him doing this, and we were like, wow, like way more intense than we do now, because like now we're like a little bit used to it, but at the time we were like just had never seen anything. I mean,
that was incredible.
That thing was absurd. Yeah, to wheelie it, I had to like use momentum and a dune. Like it wasn't. It's so long it wouldn't power wheelie, but once you got it up, it would just
That's hilarious.
It was
just seeing that little machine out there. I would never imagine it because the carcass is still out there. Yeah, we use little parts from it here and there every once in a while. So
Oh yeah, but so aside from wheeling it, the best part of that was when the Tacoma broke. After Sam almost rolled it, Sam has been almost rolling stuff since day one.
It's so a true fact. Like in the beginning, I'm like, the commoners are a little bit mean. Like he's not that bad. And then you just start doing the math, and it's like, wow, every time he's been in something, it's rolled over.
Pretty much. Yeah, so we almost rolled the taco, and then it broke. And then Sam and I rode double on the murder scooter back to the truck because we were way out in the dunes. So I was driving it, and Sam was standing behind me. So two men standing on a scooter and driving it through sand.
It was the most jank thing I've ever seen.
On the most difficult to ride two-wheeled vehicle you can imagine. Like, think about the Ruckus. It actually handled somewhat similarly, except you couldn't sit down because there was no seat. There was just a burning hot exhaust.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. And it was way heavier and way longer. So, but like, you know the weirdness of the handling of the Ruckus? It was kind of like that.
Oh, that's terrible.
But way worse. And driving it in sand. Oh. It had way less power than the Ruckus, but it was also less controllable.
But it was a two-stroke.
It was a two-stroke, so it was like...
And it didn't have a dune tire in the front.
So it had a paddle tire in the rear, but just a regular dirt tire in the front.
A bald dirt
tire.
Oh, no. It was pretty jank.
Yeah, so...
That's very jank.
Yeah, riding two up on that was hilarious.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was one good truck story for sure.
Where did it go after that? Because it took some damage there.
What, the scooter?
I was thinking the snowmobile day that we made was the Sur-Ron versus the 450 in the snow.
What?
No,
it was way before you had a Sur-Ron.
We were at the taking snowmobiles out, but it was my window that I smashed.
Oh yeah, that was way later, and that was your window. Yeah,
was that Sam that told me?
Yeah, Sam was like, "Dude, that's gonna smash your window," and Edwin drove forward literally 10 feet, smashed his window.
So how? Ratchet strapped the tunnel of the snowmobile below the lip of my bed, and I was like, "Premium, let's go." I was cold. And Sam was like, "That's going to break your back window." And I'm like, "No, it's ratchet strapped under the window." But the first little bump I hit, it like popped up, doinked straight into my window.
Oh my
gosh. Like, I think he was completing his sentence of telling me that was a bad idea and my glass was gone.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, and you don't want to be missing truck glass in the winter when you're out on the snowmobile trails.
Good.
But yeah, I thought that was your truck for a second, and I was like, nope, that was me being an idiot.
Yep. Aww. Yeah, I mean, then there was the first time we went to Castle Rock for the Power Wheels like dirt track racing. That was awesome. That was a good one. We took Asa that year to drive the Barbie car.
Yep. Asa won.
Asa got first, and I got third.
First place in the kitchen sink classic class.
Or no, wait. Rock. No, I got first. That because I was.
What the devil?
That's right. I was trying to remember. Yeah. I got third place because they misspelled the trophy, but the reason I didn't get first because I was driving Sendy, and Sendy was absolutely ripping on her little snowblower tires back then, and I was like laps ahead of everyone. But on the actual race, so we did like multiple heats, just like when you were there. Yeah. But on the actual race, I was losing coolant because I think the head gasket was blown on that engine for a long time. Yeah, and we just let it go.
Coolant.
And they pulled me over to be like, "Hey, you're leaking." I'm like, "No." So they pulled me aside. I was like, "Yeah, it's just the coolant reservoir. It's fine." And I just took off again. But then I got into third place at that point.
Third
place.
And there was pulled over long enough to get passes.
Yeah, everybody passed me. Yeah,
was it the sway bar issue? We were like going around camp asking if anyone had a welder, and this guy was like, oh, there's this place down the street and they have a welder. So we just like drove.
We went to a tire shop. Yeah, it was just.
And we were wearing like flip flops or something. I remember like I wasn't wearing shoes, and they were like all these hardened tire shop men.
Yeah, I remember you guys pointing that shop out to me.
Yeah, yep. And they were like just looking at me like, who is this kid with his camera? Like.
Yeah, I forget what it was we had to weld. It was either steering or sway bar, but then Steve had to weld some on his too.
In the bed of the truck. It was just kind of like both the rigs were hanging out the bed of the truck, and then No, you were wearing flip-flops.
I was wearing flip-flops for sure.
I have a slow motion shot of welding berries falling from the Power Wheels onto Ethan's feet. It was so premium.
Gosh.
Yeah, that's the situation. And the guys were looking at you like, what are you doing, man?
Yeah.
Wearing flip-flops and welding.
And the best part of that is we took Cindy, the Barbie car, and the murder scooter with a track on the back and a ski on the front. Or not a ski, a wheel on the front and a snowmobile track on the back. We took all of those in the bed of that truck. We didn't pull a trailer that year.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
We went to the
And then we went to the dunes the next day.
Yeah. And at the dunes, this man with a turboed Razor wanted to drag race the murder scooter. And I forget if it was you or Asa driving.
I think it was me, but
dusted him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And
That thing was actually quick in a straight line.
But with the snowmobile track and the sand, it had so much traction.
That was actually the most drivable it ever was with a track in the sand.
Yeah, a track in the snow
sand
was
machine.
Oh yeah, the snow bike version of that thing was very hard to drive.
Why? Why would that be much different than sand?
It was actually, it wasn't that bad. It was just not that reliable and like. Once I made the track tilt, it was actually fairly rideable.
You
it was
the
just
track tilt.
Yeah, I made it so that I put pivots on the suspension points so that the bottom part of the track the skid would just pivot, and that made it because before that it was a full-size snowmobile track, so it was 15 inches wide. So before that it was on soft snow, it was okay, but getting to the soft snow was like impossible.
Yeah.
But then it just wasn't that reliable, and it didn't have good suspension. It was pretty jank.
You should tell the good people about the next year at Castle Rock how prepared we were.
Oh, yeah. We were actually pretty prepared. I think, honestly, that Castle Rock experience might have been like the most prepared Grindhard has ever been. When I've been with you.
that was your first Grindhard experience,
that was
really,
my first
basically.
one, starting to be part of the team. So
because we had the Power Wheels. I remember Ethan and I talking because we had the Power Wheels ready to go, and we were like, man, this is our first year having more stuff working than we have people to drive it, because Asa couldn't come with us that year, and I was like, well,
and/or didn't want to after the first year. He had fun, but he was like, I don't know if I need to do that again.
And so I was like, well, I really want to drive one, but then we can't
then you
film.
can't film.
Yeah.
I was like thinking, I'll set the drone on like the auto orbit mode, but there's it's protected.
Osprey nests
it's
or
an
something.
Osprey nest situation. So, which is weird that having a racetrack doesn't bother the ospreys. Like, is the drone really
the drone is
deal
what
compared to like 100 Harleys going rah with straight pipes? But anyways, so I was like, what about Will?
A cut in half Miata guy.
Yeah, because you showed up like to weld something one day, and you're cut in half Miata. And I was like, what about that kid? I bet he wants to drive a Power Wheels. And Ethan was like, actually, I bet he would. And he rides like motorcycles, so he'd probably like figure it out.
Yeah, so I called him up, and he came over the day before we left and drove Cindy for the first time ever.
Yeah, I was like driving around, getting it, like figuring it out. I was like, okay. And I like drove it around for like 15 minutes. So then we were like,
well, he drove it for so long, just circles and circles.
Yeah.
And Ethan was like, I don't think Cindy's like ever had this many miles, because normally we just rode it for a couple minutes and you feel pretty damaged after you drive, especially in that configuration before we got the nicer shocks and stuff. Like, you feel pretty damaged after a couple minutes of Cindy. We were just going back and forth and having the best time I've ever seen a human have. And I was like, oh yeah, he's gonna fit right in.
Yeah, honestly, it was more comfortable than my daily driver at the time. The cut in half Miata. Seriously, I think that thing had a little more on it.
So we only packed 3 wide in the truck.
Yeah, that was still, but we
3
barely
wide.
made it. That was when it started having O2 sensor issues.
Was that the trip?
Yeah,
that was
we
the
were.
I wanted to talk about.
We were driving through. Well, we were driving from, through Washington. We were going up the pass, going from like I-90 over through Yakima, because we were going that way through the mountains to get to Castle Rock.
And the uphill section turned into a situation.
And it was hot that day too. It was like apocalypse levels of smoke. Remember?
Yeah.
Actually, That was when I had evacuation notices on my door, and then we just left for the weekend.
I could literally see fire from my parents'.
Yeah, I could see it from my house here. That was that year.
Yeah.
And so we were driving through apocalypse smoke, and the truck was kind of done with it. We were towing the trailer, and we had the rotary trike on the trailer that time.
It had all kinds
and
of
the
O2
Colonel
sensors going off, and there's this mad exhaust leak that seemed to be getting progressively worse.
It was getting closer to us. It like started at the back of the truck,
and it would go into like a limp mode when the O2 sensor went funky, and then the exhaust leak would sound way worse because you'd just be full throttle, but it wouldn't really be making much power, so you'd be like 4,000 RPM, just
it would like cut cylinders or something and like shoot gas into the exhaust and pop, pop, pop,
It
pop.
was terrible.
And so we got really lucky, and we found the holy grail of road trip situations. An O'Reilly Auto Parts in the same parking lot as a Taco Bell.
Oh, I forgot about the Taco Bell. Yeah.
It was beautiful. So we got like
the cheapest code scanner they had.
Because they'll code scan you for free, and then we saw the code, and then we killed it, and then it came right back on when we got our Taco Bell. So we just went back in and bought a code scanner. You left it plugged in, and then every time it turned into jank mode, you just like pull over a little bit, reset it.
I didn't even need to pull over. I just like would slow down because it was slower.
Yeah.
And then I just hit two buttons. I had that code scanner lived in the door pocket of that truck from that day until the day I sold it.
And he didn't do anything about it. Just
Nope, I didn't.
Jank.
And it got worse and worse, like progressively since that trip. It was like getting down to like every 10
The last
minutes.
trip Will and I did with it, we barely made it home.
It was the last
and it
trip
stopped working. The Unimog.
Well, when janky things happen and Ethan's driving, he has some kind of like
magic
engineering knowledge or like I don't know, when something like that happens to me, I'm like, other problems are going to happen and we're going to get stranded. But Ethan thinks so logically. He's like, this is the only problem. We just keep clearing the code and we'll make it. No big deal. Yeah. And Will and I are looking at each other when we have like no service and so far in the middle of nowhere going to Castle Rock, and we're like,
And it was the first time I met someone like way jankier than me that just like drives things to the next
I'm not
level.
jankier than you, Will. Only in that one capacity.
When it comes to like understanding how long a car could go without oil and stuff, like Ethan is the king. He can just be like, that will just go forever. And this man literally like built a fuel injection system or that.
Oh, the carburation. Yeah, the
carburation.
I need to actually put that up in the new shop. The Jag Jag manifold.
Sick.
Yeah.
That thing is an inspiration.
So when we made it up on top of the hill, I felt a lot better. If I had this ring at the time, I'd get a notification on my phone like, you're max level stress. Now it doesn't even phase me.
Yep.
Like when the tire popped in the middle of nowhere, went on the limo trip, like
that was good.
Any kind of overheating issue, any kind of tire falling off in the middle of the desert, I'm like,
yep,
we'll find a way.
Yep. And then let's see. We also took that truck. Yeah. We took your dad's truck when we went to like SEMA and Jay Leno's.
Sketchier than that the second time in Castle Rock.
Oh,
I think we got to finalize that because your truck ended up being Will and I's bed that night. So for some reason. Like
you guys slept in the bed of the truck, or one of you did.
We were like, let's be very prepared. We had the MotoGP suits. I had all the camera gear, extra batteries, the little electric thing to help recharge the batteries. I was so prepared.
Except you didn't bring your sleeping bag.
We were doing they do this jank kidney bean paved course thing at night. So we were out there really late, just racing the Power Wheels in circles and watching people in mini bikes just run into each other. It was super fun. And then when it's about time for bed, Will and I look at each other and we're like, oh no, we didn't bring a sleeping bag, a tent, a pillow, a water bottle,
nothing.
A toothbrush.
I brought nothing. I think I had like a bag with like, I don't even know what I had with me at the time. Nothing.
So Will and I think we both had hoodies.
Yeah.
So we just laid in the back of the truck.
Didn't Steve give you guys something, a blanket or a sleeping bag or something?
Because we were laying in the back of the truck trying to sleep, and Steve came by and he was like, hey, you guys need a blanket? And we looked at each other, we're like, yeah. And then he brought us the thinnest, it's like a bed sheet at a hotel, you know what I mean? And so we balled it up and kind of made a pillow situation out of it. And then I felt the condensation at like 3 a.m. just like soaking me because we were on steel and it was getting colder. And so I woke up Will. I was like, Will, let's go under the truck. We'll be so much drier in the morning. And you know how Will sleeps? He was like, and I was like, okay. So I let him have this little pink hotel bed sheet situation, and I laid underneath the truck, and it was actually way comfier because it's like
grass,
dusty sand.
Yeah,
there.
with bits of grass.
And so I woke up pretty good. Solid 3 hours of sleep, like pretty cold, but ready to go on the day. And Will was like, ugh. And he was like, dude, you let me sleep in the truck last night. It's so wet, and he had like purple lines on his back from the ridges
I had
of
lines
the
from the back of that truck on my back for like the whole day.
And I was like, I cannot even believe that neither of us even remotely considered any kind of sleeping gear.
That's not the first time
not
either.
the first time or the last.
Yeah, it won't be the last either. Ethan's right.
I'm getting much better now.
Only because I send you lists.
Yeah.
I send you full lists, and then you're like, I got most of it.
When is another time we forgot?
Oh, you not so much, Edwin. I don't know. You're more responsible now, but Will needs constant reminders.
And then nothing jank happened on the way home though. Your
no,
whole
it was fine.
reset
The code scanner thing was fine. Yeah, and we went back when we went down to the dunes with the Colonel and the.
And
that was a
after
good
that
time.
trip, we also moved the Ford Ranger. Right?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, we hauled the Ford Ranger. Yeah, that was janky.
Which was
we got to
as the
backtrack.
devil.
I remembered another really good trip.
Yeah, we got to do this chronologically.
It's way backtrack.
So
inject
it was, if you know any in between here, Steven.
No, the only one I can think of is King of the Hammers.
Yeah, that's
but we're getting there.
Oh, I forgot
yeah,
we took the truck.
Steven is telling the King of the Hammers story.
Oh no.
So
Yeah.
we way early on when we first finished the Barbie Jeep, it was the first like full send, the original full send video. We took it up to Canada with our friend Clinton, his channel Dirt Garage. He's got Toyotas and stuff. So we went up there to hang out with him at an event that actually doesn't happen anymore, but they called it the Kook because it was on Lake Kookanusa, which is a reservoir.
It brings a tear to my eye whenever I think of how it doesn't happen anymore. That was the most fun redneck event I've ever been to.
Redneck events in Canada are just a different level.
So much better.
But so we went to that event, and it's called the Kook because it's in Lake Kookanusa, which is a reservoir. So in the spring, it's still all drained, but it's alongside the river that flows into it.
Oh, so
and there's just mud everywhere.
The longest flat plane of mud you can imagine.
Miles of just like flat mud.
The time of year they do it, the snow is still in the mountains. And
it's gorgeous.
When you cross the border from here, the mountains just get steeper.
Yep.
Like,
well, you've driven through there.
Yeah. So you're just in this mud valley of just
steep
premium trucks, like 6x6 hearses on actual monster truck tires.
Yep.
Sick.
And then you just see these beautiful mountains. The Sendy full send video for reference, if you guys want to look that up later.
Yep. But yeah, so that one, we took the truck for that, and we took the Tacoma, the Crunchy Taco, and the Barbie Jeep, Sendy. And we broke everything. We broke a front axle on the Tacoma because I was rock bouncing with it, and the rear axle on the Barbie Jeep, it was a 1-inch axle, and it had multiple carrier bearings on it, and it sheared the axle in half. I was doing wheelies all over the place. We got some really good footage.
Those were the best wheelies Cindy ever did, I think. Just locking up those snowblower tires on that hardened lake
Those
bed.
were pretty good, but we also had some insane ones at Mike's house on the street.
Oh,
on the way to Jay Leno's. Those were... We were doing like 12 o'clocks just cruising.
Dude, I wish you were there.
Down the
So many
street.
wheelies.
Oh.
Yeah, so that was another really good trip with the truck. And the reason it wasn't that much of a story in terms of the truck. It was fine, but then you had to go upload the video for some reason. You had to like re-upload it or something.
Yeah.
And so we were like out in the middle of nowhere near Cranbrook, and it was like a half-hour drive or something back to Cranbrook, but Clinton's dad or his brother was like, oh, if you just take this dirt road, it's way straighter.
Yeah.
But it was like the bumpiest, washboardiest dirt road ever. And you took the truck and you were just like mobbing, but you're like, I had to air down, man. It was so bad, and it was still...
It hurt my spine. And he was like, I got super fast internet, man. Because I think it might have been like, I remember being kind of stressed out because I think it was one of our first ad deals for Grindhard.
It wouldn't...
And we had to like re-upload something. And he was like, yeah, I got fast internet and whatever. And I had the file on my computer. We just had to re-upload
Get the internet.
Yeah.
And so I was just mobbing there trying to get it out on time. And then when I got there, the internet was like not as advertised.
No, yeah, it was not very fast.
So long. I missed like most of the daytime kook, like when they all go in the mud hole and stuff. I missed all that. I missed the hearse going through the mud.
Yep.
I was sad.
Dang.
Yep. But then you came back in time for beer darts.
Yeah, that's true.
That's a truly Canadian event.
Yeah.
Where you sit in a lawn chair with a beer about like 30, 40 feet apart and throw darts at each other's beers. But you're just sitting there throwing darts at each other.
Yeah. It's super fun.
Edwin got a slow-mo of the dart piercing a beer and it exploding everywhere.
Yes, sir.
He was running back and forth between the beers.
Yeah.
For like 2 hours. Just
Wait,
back
so
and
is
forth.
it like a red cup with beer?
No,
in it?
like a can,
It's
full
glass
can,
or-
unopened beer can.
So picture it this way. You're sitting directly across from the person,
Do people
right?
get hit by these darts?
Oh
the
yeah,
whole
that's
And if you react and
Ow.
move, then you lose.
That's horrible.
yeah. So you have to sit there perfectly still and just take a dart to the kneecap.
Yeah. And then you try to get their beer, and then obviously if you get it, they need to drink
They have to
it.
chug their whole beer. Yeah.
So I was really in the danger zone because, you got some drunk Canadians just tossing darts back and forth. And Ethan's not kidding. I used an entire battery because it's not very often that.
Yeah. And you still, and the sad thing is you didn't even use that shot in the video.
Yeah, I should have.
It was, but
Yeah,
I mean,
I'll put it in a video.
I'll put it
at the end of the next video.
or just
I'll
put it at the
find
end of this podcast for anybody watching it.
Yeah,
Because I
want
just
to
ran.
see it.
That's all I did that whole night is I drove all the way out there, uploaded the video, drove all the way back, and when I got back, you guys were already setting up this game. And so I just ran back and forth, back and forth, back and forth because I wanted the shot so bad.
Did you play this game, Ethan?
No, I was just spectating.
But when I got it, bam, nice. And
It
the
was a
Canadians
banger.
lost their mind. I showed them, and they were like, "Ah!" Like, you gotta be proud of your game, your culture. Like, it is a Canadian game, right?
I assume so.
I've only seen
That
it
sounds
there.
like
Yeah.
a very Canadian
That and
game.
Dodge beer. You guys all got to learn Dodge beer
Yeah.
last time we had a party
Oh,
here.
that was
but-
fun. I liked that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Their games
anyway,
are
so that
better.
was the backtrack to a good time with the
Yeah.
old Chevy truck.
A great time.
It,
And it was still like in premium condition then.
That was probably that wasn't before the door got smashed in. So it was
Oh, okay. I guess
It
it
was-
wasn't in premium.
But the best thing is, I never in the entire time I owned that truck, I did a couple of oil changes. I replaced the AC belt, and I think that's. Oh, and I did the brakes.
You did the brakes?
I did eventually.
Oh yeah, Will, you need to
But
tell
I
your
did.
story
I
that
think
you
I
told
did.
me.
I think I did the rears, and then the fronts went bad. So I never got around to doing the fronts before I sold it. But I did the rears before that. Yeah. So I basically put no money into that truck, and then I sold it for $1,500 in barely running condition.
Yeah.
So
You should tell me the story you were telling me when we were doing our 100-mile challenge.
Oh,
about,
yeah.
Oh, when you borrowed it to pick up a WRX or whatever.
No,
His first time driving
it
with
threw
you.
an accessory belt when I was pulling the WRX, but that was fine. That wasn't very intense. But before I worked here and before we were going to pick up your snow bike, I think, in Montana.
Yeah.
That was the first time I'd ever ridden in that truck. And Ethan was like kind of explaining the brakes and stuff, and he's like, they're kind of metal on metal. And we're like blasting down this Montana highway going like 80 miles an hour, and he's like, see, look. Shoo! And he just like did come to a stop very quickly, but it sounded like a swordsmith, like swordsmithing, like a premium weapon or something. It was like,
Yeah, so that would have been the rears when the rears went metal on metal. And then on the King of the Hammers trip, the fronts went metal on metal.
yeah. And I just remember like knowing in the back of my head that it was metal on metal every grind art trip and just being like, nice. And we just, every time we'd add a little more weight, bigger truck, more stuff. And I was like, when is it just going to not work anymore?
Ethan just drifted the absolute
Devil
dickens out of that thing because every time we did like something together where I took my truck and you took your truck in the winter, I remember like the second we get off a main road, you're just like, brah, brah,
Oh,
like,
yeah. I
used to
yeah.
drifts. And I remember like being like, oh yeah, putting it in, because I'm like very cautious about my tires and like the way I drive. I like slow down to a complete stop before putting it in 4-wheel high, even though I have like the automatic transfer case on my Dodge, and then speed back up slowly. And then Ethan's just going, like, that
Dude, I
happened
used to
at
get
least a dozen
such
times.
good drifts in that
yeah,
truck.
that truck would go
You
sideways.
drifted the snot out of
Oh,
that
yeah.
thing.
I really miss having a car that I just don't care about at all. I was thinking the other day about reviving my old Porsche just to have a car that I can absolutely thrash.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
like it's
that's
just
my
so
least
much
favorite
fun.
thing about driving the grind hard Tesla is at any moment I know that if I mess something up, it just will never work again. So
well, and that one's worse because it's so much more complicated. And
exactly. Maybe I
Tesla
should get
nonsense.
a '99 Silverado.
Apparently, you should. That's the most.
Because then I can just send it.
I've owned a lot of cars. Nothing even comes close to the value of that car or of that truck. I mean, I did have one Subaru that I bought for $350. And I drove it for like 60,000 miles or 50,000 miles.
Pretty good value.
And then I gave it to my mom, and she drove it for another 30 or 40.
That thing
the
was
purple
older
one.
than Father Time, and it worked fine.
And I had to replace a transmission in it, but that's because I'd been jumping it on Forest Service roads, and one of the transcooler lines like broke, and it spewed all the ATF out.
I'm pretty sure
You'll
I
have
got
that.
drives to school in that car.
Oh, you probably did.
Yeah. Did it have the weird seatbelts?
Yeah.
Like from a spaceship?
But
They were
my
like-
mom had two of those cars, so you might have been in the gray one that was its predecessor,
Oh, the predecessor.
and then the purple one that
She'd
had been
feed
mine.
me a pancake, and then we'd jump in this Subaru that I'd never seen before because I hadn't seen Subarus ever before that. And you'd sit in, and it was this square-like car with like alien technology. The seatbelts would be like.
Yep. My mom had two of those cars, and they both went to 336,000 miles
insane.
on the original stock head gaskets.
Can you even believe?
Well, it was the EJ22, the first gen
can't.
EJ22. That engine was actually indestructible.
I
That's
can't
the engine that built Subaru's reputation. And then from there on, it just went downhill.
yeah.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Anyway, we got
Are we
sidetracked
to the
there.
hammers yet?
Let's see.
While we're
What was-
sidetracked, though, shameless plug: the premium hoodies are out now.
These are the most premium hoodie I ever did wear.
Yeah.
So if you're just listening, they're super comfy. They're black.
And they say premium.
They just have a really nice red premium logo. So go to grindhardplumbingco.com and buy one because they're premium.
Ethan and I are missing out right now. I didn't even really realize.
You want to know what happened?
Edwin says he put them in my car.
I
but
did because
they weren't
he
in
gave me a ride here because car problems. And then I was like, oh, dude, you want to see something so premium? And he was like, yeah. And then I held up the hoodie and he was like, yeah, we should bring hoodies on this trip. And I was like, no, read it. And he was like, premium. And that's how I knew he didn't even sleep at all the night before
I
our
didn't.
100-mile
I didn't.
challenge.
That's
Neither of you guys
but,
slept
yeah.
at all. You were like,
So-
I'm so excited. I can't sleep at
I
all, man.
put all four in the back of his car.
No.
I did. I truly did. And
No.
then
The thing is, I don't trust either of you in this situation. You could both
See,
be
the thing
just
is because remember
you're
when-
both so sleep deprived. You guys just like hallucinate at that
Remember
point.
when I dropped you off and I was like, "Hey, yo, why is there two hoodies in the back of my car?" And
There
you
were
were like, "There's no hoodies in the back of your car, man."
there were two hoodies in the back of your car, and then you were wearing one, and then I already had mine.
Well, now where are they?
You're wearing them.
During
I
our
have
trip,
one on.
it is the most sleep deprived because I was really sleep deprived. But I saw Will like I'd never seen him before.
I
he
was
so
sleep deprived.
out of it around like 2 a.m. He was just like driving in the left lane, like even on the actual like paved road in our little tiny tank Alibaba car that goes 5 miles an hour. He's just in the left lane, like hugging the shoulder of the wrong side of the road. I was like, well, you should bring it back. And he was trying to like explain himself. He's like, oh yeah, well, this side of the road with like the vision and stuff, and like I was like wiping the front of the windshield for him, like reaching way over, and he was like, oh, that's so much better. Like he was working at 2% cognitive level.
Oh no.
And like you're like saying repetitive things like maybe someone with like Alzheimer's or something. Like it was the most base level operating system I've ever seen you on, and I've seen you in some very sleep
I
deprived
was
situations.
so tired. That was next level.
Do you
My
even
voice
remember
still sounds.
the trip?
Yeah.
You're so tired.
Yeah. I remember the trip, and my voice remembers it too. We'll never be the same. We just sat in a red car for an unbelievably long amount of time, leaking rain into it the whole time, going, yo, she.
It seems like everything in my life happening for the last ever since I sold my reliable truck was all signs point to you need a reliable truck, Edwin.
Yeah.
Every person keeps telling me that. My wife keeps telling me that. Every time I get into a Shrek House situation in a swindly car, I'm like, yep, I should probably get a reliable truck. Like, even just when we tried to take the limo.
If you'd had a reliable truck, you could have been like, oh, well, I'll just take my truck.
Yeah, and then I wouldn't have had to put a trailer on a Tesla Model 3.
Well, but that was pretty cool anyway.
It did so good, though.
Yeah. I mean, it was a really lightweight trailer. So.
Yeah, we got on the highway and we were like, shee.
Yeah.
We both looked at each other just like, wow.
Well, and then there was the time on the way to King of the Hammers that you guys were in the Tesla on the trailer driving through Salt Lake City.
I remember that. That was so fun, and I figured out
best.
that car can play video games.
Yeah, this was one of the best nights.
You guys
of
were
my
a
life.
mess before that trip even started, because I remember Ethan and I showed up and I was joking with him about it. I was like, oh, it's like the responsible people show up here. And we were like, what could happen to Edwin and Will on the way?
You
and
were
that
saying
was,
that we're responsible?
No,
Ethan
we
and
are.
I were responsible
Because we
in that.
left earlier, so we left with the Tesla and the truck
Yeah.
to go to.
Here, let's start from the very beginning, like just paint the whole picture.
Yeah, that's
We're
what I was.
just about to finish the Tesla.
Oh,
Graham from Go Fast Campers
Yep.
is like, you guys need to come to the King of the Hammers with us. And we were under the impression that he had this like very scheduled, detailed trip already happening that we were just going to hop on board with. But he was like, key points. We get a dope custom made Go Fast camper for the Tesla.
Yep.
Down. And he's got us an interview and photo shoot with Car and Driver magazine. So we're like, down. That's the setup.
Yep.
Yeah.
And what was I gonna say? Oh, he also was like, I was like, yeah, I don't know if my truck's gonna like, it's
Make
not.
it?
I was like, it's like it's reliable, but it's pretty sad. And he's like, oh yeah, I got a truck you guys can use. And we get there, and it's like. He's like, yeah, it's a double cab like Tundra. It's fine. And I get there and it's like somehow worse than my truck.
Yeah.
And the back seats are not there because they're like it's just like it's a really just a crusty work truck for a business, you
And
know.
it was like still filled with tools and
just
stuff.
full of tools and stuff.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, I was like, this is not better. We'll just take my truck.
Yeah.
Well, that's how I was wondering why it was so much more jank than it seemed at the beginning.
Yeah,
but
that was part
makes
of it. I
sense.
mean, and not that it was his responsibility to give us a truck, but he kind of offered it as if it was like a pretty nice truck, and it was not.
Yeah, I remember the like towing situation with that truck was weird too. There was a lot of weird
It was
things.
it was just like it was clearly not a great option.
I remember it obviously not being the right
the
choice.
best, better option. Yeah. So we just piled back into my truck and towed all the way down there. And on the way back from there, that truck started having a really new and exciting problem. I mean, aside from the O2 sensor one, which we were still just clearing with codes because I was too lazy to fix it. It started doing this thing where when you're going up a pass and cruising above 4,000 RPM, the alternator would stop working after a few minutes of 4,000 or 3,000 RPM. I forget what it was. The alternator would just stop working, so all the dash lights would come on. But then if you like get up the pass and you go down the other side, it drops down in RPM. A few minutes later, alternator comes back.
First time I've ever seen that. Usually it's like alternator's dead, done.
It's dead. Nope, this one was just RPM limited.
Yeah, it was
That's
amazing.
jank, but
Ethan even said, like, when the first time we saw that light come on, he was like, oh, it's just speed relative. And I was like, huh? And he was like, yeah, we'll just go away when we speed
It
up.
must have
And
happened one more time.
that's what I don't
before that.
understand though with the way that your mind works, because once something like that happens, you rule out all the unlogical fear or troubles, and then you just focus on the thing. But it tends to just work.
Yeah.
That's
I don't know.
amazing.
Just
I
go
guess
with
if
it.
you make, maybe I just need to make more decisions based on logic and reason.
That is generally a good course of action.
Well, there's your setup, Steven. Now
Yeah.
you got to paint us the
Okay,
real
yeah.
picture
So
of
yeah,
how
the start of this
swindly.
trip is Ethan and I joking about like, oh, we're responsible and we're gonna make it there on time, and what could possibly happen with Edwin and Will on the way
and we
here?
we're like, something's gonna happen. They're gonna
Something's
have some
gonna
story.
happen. Cue your first heart attack experience since we have met you.
Why
I
did
guess
we
Edwin
leave
should
so
tell
much
that part.
later?
I think
Will
we were just-
Will had some swindly thing,
Like
and you had to
just
pick him
bought
up.
a car from
It was-
Seattle.
Yeah, I was like,
You were just getting back from Seattle or
getting
something,
Back
and then-
from
yeah.
Seattle very late, and I had like 5 at the time. I was drinking NOS energy,
Yeah, Ed Coffees. I
That
remember you
company-
got a 24-ounce coffee at the first gas station we stopped
and
at.
then 2 NOS energies at the next one. And I was like telling you like about NOS, and we were talking about like aliens and all this stuff.
We
It was
were talking
amazing.
about very interesting NFT concept that still doesn't exist, by the way. We were on to something.
Nice.
Yeah. So I'll save that intellectual property for a different time.
It was good.
But it was a good idea. And then that got on to aliens. And then
we were like, how the devil do they make the pyramids? And like right when we said that, they were like, these guys are going too far. We got to take them out.
Yeah.
And I was like, started just like feeling like I was floating off the seat, and I got all tingly. I was like, oh, and then I just like went quiet, right? I think.
Yeah,
I don't really remember.
He was quiet, and I thought he was gonna fall asleep. So like I just kind of like let him be, but then he looked like he like just wasn't alive anymore. So I was like shaking him and kind of grabbing his arm like to like feel his pulse, and his pulse just felt weird. Yeah. And so I pulled over, and then you know how Will is, he doesn't want to go to the doctor so bad. So I was like, dude, I looked up on Google, like when you were passed out, let's go to the doctor. He's like, oh, no, I'm fine. I'm just like a heavy sleeper, and I had that NOS, and my heart feels a little weird. And I was like, okay, yeah, I mean, because at this point, I was just like taking his word for it. Like, okay, like if he felt bad enough to go to the doctor, we'd go to the doctor, but he obviously didn't. And so then we just keep going about aliens, and then he just starts like torsating back and forth super hard, like slamming his head against the seat, and then he's like hitting the window like he was trying to get pain somewhere else than his chest. And I was like, dude, we are going to the hospital. So I called 911, and he's just like, Dorsey's like, I just need to go outside. And it was actually 4 degrees with wind chill.
It was so cold and windy. And
so I pull over at this truck stop, and he's running circles around the car having a heart attack. And I'm on the phone with 911. Like, 911, what's your emergency? And I was like, I don't know. My friend is like just not speaking coherently, and he had like, I thought this time I just thought he had the NOSes and the coffee. I didn't realize the caffeine he drank before.
I had so many coffees, man. It was insane.
I was like, yeah, he had too many energy drinks and his heart is irregular and all this stuff. And she was like, okay, we'll tell him to like drink water and calm down. And I was like, no, like something bad is happening. And she was like, well, you can drive because they can see your location now, I guess. She's like, you can drive to the hospital before we could send an EMT. And so I was like, okay. I was like, well, get in the car. We're driving to the hospital. And he's like, no, man, I just need something. And then he takes this stale pizza crust I had in my truck. And he grabs it like it's an ice cream cone, and he's like nibbling off of it like a mouse, and he's like, what? Like making all these jank sounds.
I haven't even heard this part yet.
I didn't hear the pizza part. Yeah, that's new.
The pizza, and he's like, this pizza's making me feel better, man. And he's like shaking, and like you can tell like his color's changing, like his skin looks good and pink, and then it starts to look like washed out white, like he's not. His heart just isn't working right. And I'm like, dude, we are going to the hospital. So I start driving to the hospital, and like 16 miles in, you know how Will's heart attacks are. Then he's just like, fine. Yeah. And he's like, dude, I'm fine. We don't need to go. And I'm like, I mean, you do seem fine.
Yeah, and we stopped at that little like 7-Eleven and got like gummy bears and more coffee, and we're good to go.
Bears.
Yeah. And so then we met up with you guys at dinner, and we were so incredibly late, obviously.
Oh, yeah. You guys were like 4 hours or whatever
I think
later.
You guy's had already installed the roof tent and everything.
Yeah, they had the roof tent.
We probably did. Yeah. Oh, yeah, right. We drove the Tesla to the restaurant with the roof tent on it.
You guys were literally ready to go. And then I think Steven saw us first, and you were like, hey, what happened?
Yeah, I was curious. Well, I think you called me at one point, and
no, you did call him.
I don't remember
we knew
what you
something
said.
of what had
happened.
happened.
I said we got into a near death situation, and I mentioned
something
that we
like
had to call 911.
And the timing was
it's
funny.
all good now,
because it was like right after Ethan and I were explaining to Graham how you guys are a little bit swindly, and it was like right after that.
And then right afterward, you guys called, and it was like,
Will's gonna die.
Yeah, Will's like having a heart attack or something. Like,
I remember, yeah, you guys were talking about how swindly we were when we arrived, and Will was like banging into walls holding his chest. And you were like, what's going on? And I was like, Will's having some jank situations, but he won't let me take him to the hospital. And I remember Ethan was looking at us like, why would Will need to go to the hospital? And I was like, trust me, he does, but he won't let me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the funniest things about that whole endeavor is that, like, at that point, like, I kind of figured we were the really swindly ones, and like that Graham was like, who are these idiots? But by the end of that trip, we all realized Graham was just as much of a swindler, if not more, than the rest of us. Like, everywhere we went, like, we all knew, like, everybody involved was very aware that the goal at any given time was making a video, or like getting to a point to make a video, or like filming a thing, and like,
but no one acted like it on that trip.
Dude, every time we went anywhere, Graham would just hop in his Jeep and yeet off in a random direction without telling anybody where he was going. And we'd all be like, where did he go? And then he'd just trundle back later on and be like, oh, yeah, hey, guys. Like, what?
Yeah. Well, from there on out, I mean, I think this was a very long way of saying we all finally got to Graham's place where they make the Go Fast campers.
Yep.
And then we did have a great night.
Oh, that was so much fun.
He had all of his campers set up in the showroom, and he was like, yeah, just crash here and we'll leave in the morning.
So we had the Tesla in their like showroom installation room.
Yeah.
We had the Camaro on the roof of the Tesla.
And we slept in the roof tent with the Camaro on the roof.
And I brought my little Razor bike with the Electro and Co kit. So we were just
wheelies.
doing wheelies until like 2 a.m. It was awesome.
Yep.
That was
and then there
was
was the display camper there. One of you guys slept.
I got to sleep in the display camper.
Yeah.
It had a little TV in it.
Yeah, I slept in there too.
Yeah.
And then there was these wooden ramps that they used for something that we were hitting on the
like
mini
setting them
bike.
up and stuff.
Like, it was so
we
much
had the
fun.
one wheels in there.
Oh yeah, we were one wheel. That was a really good time.
And Ethan's always really responsible, and he was like, you guys should go to bed because we got a big day tomorrow. And then Will and I were just like, yeah.
I actually have this video on my phone of Ethan like responsibly brushing his teeth in the corner, and you and Will just going,
and that was, I'm just putting it together now. That seemed like 3 days in one of those days. But that was the same day you had your heart situation. We were just up all night doing wheelies.
Yep.
Wow, that was so much fun.
And then we drove for 2 days down to King of the Hammers.
Into a truck situation. This is where things got interesting because I brought my truck, but we weren't planning on driving it because the clutch was about to go out or something.
No, your clutch. There was just no reason to take it. It was just like because Graham was taking his Jeep,
so we
which
just
had extra
went
seats.
4 deep in Ethan's truck for a lot of it because it. Well, I guess maybe Steven should tell this part of the story.
Well, you didn't ride down with us because you had to finish editing the video.
Yeah,
you
so
rode down
in
with
the back
Graham,
in the back of
and
his
you
Jeep.
had like this comfortable like editing setup. Meanwhile, Will and I were like fighting over who had to sit in the middle.
Yeah,
in that truck.
I remember.
We were like, "It's your turn, Will." It's like whoever got out first.
Well,
I was
used to comfortable, but he was in the back seat of a
Jeep Gladiator,
which
on 40s. What are those things?
I remember it was 37s or 40s.
I would have rather been in the truck.
Yeah, and they're like super loud and cold because they just have like a thin fiberglass shell.
And
I never rode in that
noise
truck.
canceling headphones. I just had like the ones that used to come with iPods, like the wired, jank ones. And I was in the corner trying to focus, and then there was just so much noise, and it was so cold. It's like being inside of a Jeep Gladiator in the winter is like being inside of a ice brand cooler you get at the gas station. Like no insulation, like all the wind noise. Like I just can't even believe that Jeep Gladiators are that jank.
Dude, Jeep Gladiators are the jankiest.
Well, your mom had a Jeep Wrangler, which is basically the same thing.
But the Gladiator's just like it's new. It feels like it should be good, but it's not good.
Like the condensation comes through the doors.
That new ones right now, like at the dealer lots, are marked off 40% in some states. That's how bad sales are doing this year.
Really?
On Gladiators? That's
Maybe
hilarious.
That's what I should get. I like
jank
They're
machines.
jank.
I mean, and if you're not trying to edit in the back seat in frigid weather, it was so cold those days.
It was like
so
negative
cold.
temperature.
And then we stopped in.
Once I finished editing, I opted. We pulled over at this super jank gas station.
It was a place that had like super good jerky that Graham wanted to get. It was
we
somewhere.
did like this big detour to get there. The first of many of his detours.
First of many. And Will and I looked at each other and we were like, the Tesla has heated seats.
Yep.
Another thing that we're kind of glossing over is that we tried to charge the Tesla like that entire journey
whole
down.
trip.
The whole trip was like, okay, where can we figure out how to charge this thing?
The point of the trip, we haven't really said that yet, was to do this Car and Driver article at King of the Hammers with the Tesla.
Yeah, and among other things. I mean, like the point, that was like one of the major points was to do some off-roading with the Tesla, because it was like just finally, I just finished building the roof rack. We had the roof tent. It was like, we're going to go overlanding at King of the Hammers with the Tesla. Like,
but we did stop everywhere trying to find a place to charge it. And
it was such a pain.
Nothing. That was a really, really great
such a fun
road trip. And the truck held it together the whole way. It wasn't even doing the throwing the code thing at that point,
it did a
right?
few times up some of the passes, but it didn't do that as much in colder weather, and it was freezing cold that whole trip.
Yeah.
But I mean, it did the whole trip to King of the Hammers and back, and then we also went to LA and hung out with Hoonigan and
I missed
Mike.
Oh my gosh.
Dude, you would have Mike Stanceworks.
Yeah, he'd be my best friend.
Oh, dude, he's so into BMWs and Ferraris,
I know.
and he's all about swag, but he's also just the nicest person I've ever met. Like,
if he likes wheelies
unreasonably,
too, he's just the California version.
He probably
of me.
I don't know if he does or not, but he. We didn't get on the subject of wheelies.
Every time I try to think about getting a reliable truck, I also think about E30s.
E30s. I'm not a Beamer boy at all. I love E30s.
And I mean, they're reliable. They just
Edwin, remember when I bought my Porsche 944? We were talking about you buying a E30, I buy a 944, and we do like
safari both of them.
Yeah, and do some channel stuff with them.
Yeah.
We can still do that.
There is a 4-wheel drive. There's the XI E30.
Yeah.
They're hard to get, not rusted.
No. You just get a regular E30 because it was more fun rear-wheel drive. It's not your daily in the winter. You don't want to do that to it anyway. I mean, you could drive it on nice days.
I need a car that's fun and a daily.
Yeah.
That's not part of the triangle,
You can daily it for
man.
like 7 or 8 months out of the year. Just don't try to daily it in the winter.
Every time I call Will after work, I'm like, you have friends that have RX-7s, right? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, they can probably like drive them all the time reliably, right?
And the people I know with RX-7s like drive them 3 miles like a year and add 2-stroke mixture at every pump. They can only go to 2 pumps in all of Spokane, and they're like, yeah, man, I just don't drive half of Spokane because it's a little too bumpy. Like, oh my goodness.
That's who I am, though. I just happen to have to work up a gravel road.
And Edwin's
Well, also
like,
Sandpoint is like
Sandpoint, like it just with the amount of snow we get in the winter and potholes.
you couldn't even drive down your road.
When I had my E46, though, I had about half an inch of rubber on contact with the road. It was so low and cambered out.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Thing was...
I'd show cords on the inside of my tires, and I'd still have the nubs on the outside.
Yep.
It was so premium.
But
See, and you enjoyed that. Just you never drove it in the winter, which is fine.
Yeah.
That's what you need. You need to get an E30 and
An
drive
E30 with the RX-7 motor.
No,
that's a terrible idea.
That's terrible, man. Then you get a terrible interior.
Have Will put
and a terrible
you know what would be better than that? Have Will put a R1 engine in an E30. Yeah, it's way more power than stock and weight reduction. Plus, you have 16,000 RPM of.
And you would have a shifter like. Dunk, dunk.
Yeah, and
you'd have a ripstick shifter.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm down.
There you go.
We should let Steven tell the actual at Hammers.
Yeah, you should pick up pick up where we left off, like stopping in Salt Lake.
Yeah, we could make this story very long.
Yeah, we should,
There's
because
a lot to
Steven
add.
has
We
a
can just be
really
the
good
rest of the podcast.
perspective on this situation, because I was super sleep deprived because I didn't sleep the first night and I just left. So Steven has the non-gearhead, fully, what do you call that? Unbiased opinion of what happened.
It was like
I mean, maybe not 100% unbiased, but
more neutral
outside,
stance.
Neutral, yeah.
I kind of knew what to expect, but I didn't know it was going to be that level. I think Will kind of shared that with me because like people kept telling us, "Oh, King of the Hammers is the most crazy event ever," and I'm like, "Well, I've been to Gambler, I just thought, it'll be a big version of Gambler," which is true. I just didn't think it was going to be like 1,000 times.
Million times.
Yeah.
100,000 people.
I remember showing up and it was really late and we just see all the lights and it was like, whoa.
It looked like we showed up to LA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was very intense.
Like Mad Max, LA.
Yeah. And what did happen first?
Before that, I mean, we were still in Salt Lake. Like we woke up to like 3 inches of fresh snow.
Oh, that's
It
right.
wasn't Salt Lake. It was some outskirts of that.
It was so cold.
And then we hopped in the truck with nearly bald tires and towing a trailer with a Tesla on it and a ton of other stuff.
Yeah.
And we were just passing everyone on the freeway.
Yeah, we were
I don't
mobbing.
believe in going really slow.
Yeah,
when
Ethan
there's
was like,
snow.
"What are these people doing? Get out of my way!"
If they're
then,
not
like,
even towing, they're
jankiest-
going like 40 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember janking through traffic
Yeah.
in the ice
Yeah.
with the trailer.
Why didn't
brought
I
one too.
have
I
a
just bought one
sleeping
at
bag
McDonald's
on
'cause
that?
it seemed like
we
a
were
better.
just cold.
Yeah.
We were just
Yeah.
going to sleep in the Tesla. That was our plan from the beginning. We're not bringing anything. Wow, this is a theme. You're right, Stephen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very
So
common.
anyway,
actually.
I just thought I'd backtrack
Yeah.
that. But yeah, and then
Yeah,
so
so-
eventually we did get
So
to
we got
King
the
of Hammer. At, like,
hammers.
I have bad lungs and bad skin in the first place. Like I'm very sensitive to
Yeah.
that kind of thing. And then COVID absolutely destroyed me.
Yeah,
Like,
you
I
were dead
couldn't
for, like,
think or breathe for months.
months, yeah.
I still am not the same. Like over a year later, but it was like right after. And smudge pots are like these half propane tank things with like these little chimneys, and you burn old oil and stuff.
They're
And-
meant to. They're meant to
parked.
burn like kerosene and diesel and stuff.
But that's
to
not
clean.
what
No,
you do at
no.
King of the Hammers.
That's what. I was clarifying.
You just see black smoke, like it looks like you're driving into like some kind of jank apocalyptic.
That's a really good way
like-
to describe King of the Hammers. Is driving into a janky apocalyptic Mad Max thing.
Where
Except
people are just burning ATF, the stinkiest thing you could even imagine.
used gear lube, whatever fluids came out of their rock bouncer that day.
Yeah, I hate that smell.
I was trying to sleep in the Tesla, and we parked right by one of these things, and the smoke was just coming in, and I just couldn't breathe, and I was in so much chest pain, and I just went home the next day.
Yep.
Because the Fab Rats were there, and we like went janking off in the desert with them.
You
And
also
so-
had something important that you had to do at home, and you hadn't done the
Yeah.
math of how many days we were going to be gone.
I do that.
We
a
were
lot.
gone so much longer than I thought.
Yeah, I mean, we were gone a few extra days, but like even like the minimum number of days would have been like nowhere
Yeah.
near enough for your whatever important thing you
I
had to
forget what
sign.
it was. I was gonna just go to the end of the Hammer Town, they call it, and hitchhike to the airport. But we were talking to the Fab Rats, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we came, we saw, we're done." And I was like, "Really? Are you?"
Well, they were there a
going
few
through
days.
the airport.
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah. And so I went down with Rory and the Fab Rats, and it was awesome. Rory's great. Hung out with him. And then I was the dirtiest, saddest, most sleep deprived person on the planet. I'd booked the cheapest hotel in Vegas to fly out in the morning. It was like a $60 room. That was like a jank room in the Flamingo.
Yeah, and you were complaining about your hotel room while we were freezing at Gambler. You're sending us videos like, "Oh, my hotel room's so jank." We're like, "Dude, it's like 12 degrees and we're sleeping in tents with smudge pots."
Ethan, Will, and I were literally covered in sand when you sent that video, and you looked like you just like freshly showered.
We were like,
we were at like the fourth in and out place of the trip. No, that was different. That was Chick.
Well, I was in
Yeah.
line to get, my room key, and I was just the saddest, like, sad boy you've ever seen. And this was before any showers or anything, just pure King of the Hammers, mud and dirt and smudge pot, bloodshot eyes. And I was in line, and this lady just looked at me. She was like, "This is your room. It's 416." And I was like, "Oh, that's not my room." And she was like, "Yeah, here's your room. I gave you a free upgrade." And I was like, "Oh, that's nice." But I was like at 2% processing level. I get into my room, and she gives me like the pimp master suite.
Yeah, I
That's
remember.
right.
That's
You got
Oh, it wasn't
upgraded.
complaining.
I
You were
sent you
saying
guys.
because you said it was a jank hotel. I forgot it was like the penthouse.
It was
Frickin'
it was so nice, like view of the strip, like 3 rooms, like all these beds.
pimp.
Like that lady hooked it up. That put a
I think
smile.
that same night we couldn't find a hotel that had multiple beds.
So we all slept in the same
but somehow
bed.
I drew the short straw and got the last shower, and I get to the like where the bed is, and Ethan's all the way on one side, and Will's all the way on the other side, and I was like, "Oh."
Leaving that
scoot
place,
over, Will.
leaving Hammers felt like we had been out there for like years.
Yeah, it
When
was
we
a long
left
time.
Hammers, I was like, oh, like I got back to normal life, and people are like, yeah, like they had like a normal 2-week life, and I was like, it's only been 2 weeks. Like,
It wasn't. We weren't even gone 2 weeks. Like
It
not
was like
even.
a
It was
week and
like
a
basically a
half, or,
week.
like,
I think.
It was
felt
11
like-
days.
Oh, was it? Okay, I couldn't remember.
It felt
yeah.
like
So
years
still, yeah,
of
less
my
than
life.
two
Yeah,
weeks, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it was intense. It was very
Yeah.
next level. But
You got to be built different for that event.
Yeah.
Well, you also
prepared
have to,
different.
I'm
like
not built for it.
sleeping in tents is not the way to Hammers.
No.
Like you want definitely like a trailer, van, or RV or something that has like actual walls.
And
the dust and the noise and
the smudge pots now.
Yeah. Well, and also the only night you were there. No, you were there 2 nights. The second night we weren't near smudge pots and it was way better, but. Like we just happened to park in a camp that was just like full of them down in the flats where there's like not as much wind and it was like just drifting. And while you were sleeping in the Tesla with, I mean, I'm sure that with your COVID lungs, it wasn't great, but I was in a tent on top of the Tesla with the smudge just going right through the tent.
I just can't even believe that you did that. Like, I don't think I'd be alive today if I did that.
I still think my lungs are built different after that trip.
Yeah.
My lungs apparently are actually just built different because it didn't bother me really that much. I mean,
you kind of have some kind of beast mode lung situation. I've never really understood.
I don't know either, but yeah.
Yeah, what else? Hammers got wild. Oh, I remember you guys
circle track thing.
Oh, that was entertaining.
What were you gonna say?
Oh, at night, everyone just goes so hard, and I was so sad that Edwin couldn't see it because I was like, it doesn't hit the same on camera. I have phone clips and film of it, but it's like a whole different experience.
That was
night
so
crawling.
fun.
People are like shooting fireworks at
each other across the ground, or they're like just shooting them up, but you're in a canyon about this wide. And so you're on the sides of the canyon and they're just boom, fireworks in your face.
I remember Graham being like, wow, Steven always has safety glasses. And I'm like, this is why, man.
That was really funny.
I remember editing that video and I was like, holy smokes, I missed the
event. Yeah,
that was why you go
point.
to KOH because you don't see much of the racing. It's like a 200-mile course or whatever, 100 miles. I don't know.
Yeah.
Way out in the desert, you only see like one little section of it. So people really go there for the after party at night when people just go bang up backdoor. It's the name of the obstacle is Backdoor, and the other one's called Chocolate Thunder. Those are the two main event like night wheeling places.
That is way more fun watching that than the race. But we did kind of like run across the racetrack.
We got to see some really cool parts of the race.
That was way more fun because
that was cool.
The
we got
spot
like
they have you watch is like.
Well, it's I mean the main spot closest to camp, but where that was with the guy from Car and Driver. And his name was Jason. He had like a media pass, and so we hopped in his truck and went out to like a back corner of the track where no one was. It was just really chill. Like there was no people, literally like 4 people that we walked past and then nobody.
And it was cool because
cool terrain.
Yeah, and there was like a truck every like 5 to 10 minutes or so.
So we're just chilling and then watching the trucks come through.
That was actually a cool part.
Yeah.
I take away overall for me, even though I left early, it was a good life experience. I wish I would have stayed one more day to see the like crazy night wheeling shenanigans. Like overall, I'd say it's a good life experience. Would you guys say the same? Or?
No, 100%. I mean, I don't know about Steven. Steven probably wouldn't.
No, I'll never go there again. Well, maybe.
We would have to pay Steven a lot extra to go there.
We'd be more prepared next time,
we'd know
too.
what we're getting into.
I would go to King of the Hammers again.
Yeah.
That was a fun place.
I would too, but I wouldn't try particularly hard to go again. Having seen it once, I don't particularly feel like I need to. It's not the type of thing I need to feel like I need to see again. I would go if like we were going with some friends or we had like a sponsor or even if we just had like a vehicle that made sense to actually take there or something. But like just as a spectator thing, I think even for me, which I'm into off-roading way more than the rest of you guys, like even for me, it was like, okay, I saw that. Don't need to see it again.
I hear that from most people that go.
Yeah.
They're like, oh yeah, I went once. It was interesting.
It's their entire identity.
And they'll spend all year preparing just for that.
It's a lot like Burning Man people.
Yeah.
Like the Burning Man people are like, I've never been, but they're like, this is my life. This is what I'm preparing for. Like when I was DJing in Florida, there was people that were like working on their light installation all year round. Like they lived in a barn and they didn't care at all about anything else except making something really cool for Burning Man.
Yep. Yeah, King of the Hammers is kind of that. It's just the ultra redneck version with really silly trucks.
So here's the thing, though, is like King of the Hammers is a cool event. It just gets bigger every single year. There was like, what, 110,000 people there?
I don't know. 100? We heard a bunch of numbers. I heard 80, 100. It was somewhere near 100,000 people.
Yeah. So like Gambler, to me, is like the peak of what those events can be. And that's like as big as like I'd want to do something like that. Because Gambler's a lot of fun.
6,000.
It's not overwhelming in the same way.
And Gambler's a lot more chill. Like in its own way. I mean, if Gambler's super rowdy, but the people tend to be very
The thing
friendly.
is, like, Gambler is at like a baseline, and like Edwin and I, for example, were able to bring that up. At King of the Hammers, you can't bring the level up.
Yeah.
Like it's
You're just
max.
at max level, and it's
Full jammed, as Will would say.
And there's plenty of great people there, but there's also a lot of really aggressive people.
Mean
like we
people.
just drove near this guy's camp at like 1 mile an hour trying to find our way through somewhere with the Tesla. He just came out screaming at us. Just like absolutely pissed, yelling at us because
You'd
we
never
drove.
get that at Gambler.
Yeah. We just drove at 1 mile an hour between his fire pit and his trailer that were like 48 feet apart.
Yeah.
There was nothing in there. It was just like fire pit way over there, trailer way over there. And we drove between them because that's where it made sense to drive. And he just came out screaming. He's like,
you hit my dog.
no, he's like, I'm going to come through and run over your dog. Like,
Yeah.
he was just
Run
running
over your dog?
Yeah, basically.
Oh my goodness.
Like, lost his mind. Anyway,
That
the
reminds
point
me of one
is,
of the more jank things that happened. Remember, I brought my little Razor bike that I just like modded to go like 60 miles an hour. It's like a little Walmart bike. That was also with an electrode co kit.
Yep.
And this guy was like,
Ralph.
I really want to
Ralph,
try
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know why I thought he knew how to ride dirt bikes or I'd ridden dirt bikes
you
before.
keep doing this.
Yeah, I just
Letting
like,
people ride your psycho bikes without
I just
vetting
like,
them.
And I always tell them like it's unassuming. It will loop. Like I always tell people because
Yep.
it doesn't make sound, so you don't think
Yep.
it's that powerful.
That's true.
And I just remember seeing this guy jank down the hill at like maximum velocity without a helmet, and I was like, "Oh no!"
And he just smashed
His
his
wheels
face.
going.
Yeah, he got the death wobble. He was holding in the front brake in the dust, which is not what you do.
Nope.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had like
went
this big bandage
bam.
the next day. I didn't see the crash. I just saw him with the
Yeah,
His
bandage.
like
did I.
face was like peeled down a couple inches.
Yeah.
He was built.
He was
different after
stoked
Gambler,
about it
too.
though too. He was like, "Oh, I don't mind."
Yeah.
Like, he was just like really stoked to be hanging out with us and stuff.
I was like,
Yeah, it was. That was.
So that's when I decided to not let people ride my little bikes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those little bikes are psychotic.
Yeah.
And then we went trundling out into the desert with Fab Rats and unfortunately broke the Colonel and the Camaro.
Oh, I gotta hit those whoops on the Camaro.
that was
Just-
the last thing the Camaro ever did, pretty much.
Those. I
That's
wish
when
you could have.
started on your middle-aged back meme.
Yeah, I wish you could have driven the Colonel in those whoops because like, or maybe not. I mean, you might have just ended, but it was insane because they're full-size whoops that people like don't hit very fast in like pretty built trucks. I mean, super built trucks, they'll just blast through them.
Yeah.
In the Colonel, which is like 4 feet long, I was just I don't know. I didn't have a speedometer of any kind, but I was probably doing like 45, 50 miles an hour, just
That
cruising
and
over
I was
the top
trying
of the
to
whoops.
keep up with Ethan.
I
This
know.
is
I was
before.
like, don't try to keep up, and I see Will back there just like, boom, boom in the Camaro,
This is before
which
I
has like
didn't understand
3
the
inches of
suspension.
suspension at most.
Yeah, and they're Amazon. They're like $80 Fox or not
Amazon
Fox,
Air
but
Shocks, yeah.
they're Amazon Air Shocks. They're not
For
even
mountain
80.
bikes.
They're like $40 a piece.
Yep.
And they've got that like an inch of
My
travel.
back and has never felt the same after that event.
Yep.
Oh,
that was a good time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was fun.
that was
It was
awesome.
a good time.
Yeah, I would definitely go back, but I'd choose to like have a little bit more of a plan of where to camp.
And have to have a trailer.
Yeah, have some sort of an enclosed space to be, and or just be outside of where everyone else is, like to camp. We were just right in the middle of everything, and that's just not the move. And then also go with somebody, like hang out with Fab Rats was the most fun we had there.
Yeah.
So like organize and go. Like we kind of did that to go hang out with Max Powell, but then like some of the people he was hanging out with were their maximum smudge pot bros, and we didn't want to be anywhere near that, so we left.
Yeah,
and then they
the
left somewhere
smudge
else.
pot.
And
like,
I think the key
you know-
to that event, to having fun at that event, is not to do things like before. We had just like so much.
Oh yeah,
going on.
that was the,
We were
we had
already
way too much
tired,
stuff when we got there. Yeah,
And then we got there, and it was
you got to
like,
be well rested when you get to KOH.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but yeah.
And then after KOH, we immediately went where? To San Fran?
We went to straight to LA.
Oh, yeah.
We did get a night in a hotel. Was that the night we had to
that
share
might
the
have
bed,
been
or
the
was
night
it-
we all had to share
Yeah.
the bed.
I didn't know that
And
story.
Steven did not even get to go under the covers at all.
I didn't want to. You guys still
did not.
looked a little King of the Hammered, and I was like,
Did you just sleep at the foot of the bed
no,
like
I
a
slept
dog?
in my clothes on top of the covers between them like a little barrier.
Yeah, it was
about that part.
hilarious.
barrier.
Yeah, it was nice.
Well, they
I
both
had my
showered
side of the
first.
bed.
Yeah, so they both claimed dibs, and I had to crawl in, and I overheat really easy, like at night especially, and I didn't really want to be like snuggled up with two dudes, so I was like, all right, I'm leaving my hoodie on, I'm going right in the middle, and I just slept like a mummy, like I always do.
Yeah. I've seen you do that so many times.
I can do that anywhere.
And then, you've slept in the back of my Subaru while I was drifting down a mountain.
And then right after that, Will has a good one of when you guys took the Tesla through the Mojave Trail. Will had an experience in your truck.
Yeah, so just to continue the timeline there. So we spent that night in the hotel, and then we went and spent a night at Stansworth's Mike's shop, which was super fun. We slept in the Tesla again, and he was just super nice guy, really, good times. And then the next day we hung out there, or maybe we spent 2 nights at his place. I don't remember, but then we went and did Hoonigan, just like a drive-by Hoonigan. Yeah. So we drove through LA, got to Hoonigan, filmed, and then left, and then just drove way out into the desert to the start of where we were going to start the Mojave Trail, and got there at like super late, like 2 a.m. or something.
Yeah, 1 or 2 in the morning.
Yeah, and then
that's when Will starts.
We
to
set up
shine.
that time lapse that Edwin forgot to use.
Yep,
my favorite
Steven
time
and I
lapse of all time.
It was like, again, like 10 or 12 degrees out there, super.
It was
cold.
so cold.
I didn't use it in the video.
No, you forgot. Wait, like you didn't put it in the video at all.
Shucks.
You used it in a later video because we reminded you, but. But yeah, anyway, the star time lapse of the
Tesla
roof
and the
test stuff.
slider, that was cool.
And then we had to wake up at like 5 a.m. to get up for sunrise and go shoot with Jason from Car and Driver. He did get some amazing shots that morning. All those ones with the dirt flinging through the tires.
Nice.
Yeah. Anyway, and then Will's part of the story starts because
Will was in the truck.
Yep. I was in the truck. Yeah, I was driving the truck around.
You're built different, all by yourself.
Yeah, I was all by myself. I can't believe Ethan let me do that. Like, I mean, I wouldn't let me just have a truck to drive around in the mountains, you know?
Well, I mean, the plan was just we were going to go through a section of the trail and come back out to the highway. And Will was going to stay with the truck so that he could meet us there or something to that effect. Yeah. It was pretty basic.
Well, so after like the first 4 hours of no response, I decided that I was just going to go around. And so I went to this coffee shop, got some coffee, and I met people because I had all the cool toys on the back, And
he's later said, I had a grind hard meet in the Starbucks parking lot.
Literally. I had like at least 5 people all around, and I was like, okay, you want to hear the Colonel start up? Didn't start up, but yeah. So, and that's before I was well known of working with Grindhard. So they're just like, "Who is this man?
Who's this random kid with all the Grindhard machines?"
Yeah. So I was just having a blast, just one wheeling in the desert. Like I was out there so long by myself, just building sandcastles.
Didn't you like help a man recover?
Yeah. So I'm out there on my one wheel in the desert, just. Like through the dirt, like traveling far out into the desert. Not a smart idea. Now that I know how one wheels work, like that thing could have died and I could have gotten stuck out.
And they're pretty heavy to carry.
But I figured out if you air it down to like almost de-beating the tire, you can just cruise over the sand.
That's when it shines in the sand.
So I was cruising out there and there was just this BMW out in the distance and I pulled up to him. Like he had like the stars on his roof,
Oh, like the Bugattis?
Yeah, like the Bugattis, but it was like a weird shafty BMW. And he had been driving out there. I don't know why. And he just was like driving out in the desert in this rear-wheel drive automatic BMW. And he dug himself so deeply into the dirt. And so I just sat out there like unshoveling him from the dirt and putting like max tracks under it and stuff. And I went back to the truck, got the green bike, went back. I was like, we're going to get you out. Got him out and drove his BMW with him in it to a road. And I was like, never go on the sand again. That is a bad idea.
It's so weird, Will, you being the one telling someone to not do something.
Yeah,
especially in regards to cars.
Yeah, so he offered me some of his package of stuff. And I was like, no. But I'll take $10.
Are you serious?
And he gave me $10, and I went back and got another coffee, and then like waited for you guys for like so much longer. It's insane.
That was amazing because the first thing I saw when I came out of the desert, like I was a little bit ahead of Ethan because the Tesla had broke down. We'll get to that part in a second, but. Yeah, I just see Will out in the desert, and it's all dusty. It's like cinematic. It's like sunset, and there's like this atmosphere in the air, and he's just walking with a one wheel out of the desert with the light on. It looked like a scene from like Star Wars or something.
Died. Like my second run out because I was like, maybe I'll find something else to do. So I drove out far into the desert and didn't have phone service. And then all of a sudden the little one wheel just dug its nose into the sand, and I was like, no.
Yeah, I just remember seeing Ethan's truck sitting there, and I'm like, where is Will? How could he possibly be gone? And you're just like half a mile out in the desert, like walk of shame with the one wheel.
That was a good time.
Yeah, that was the day we drove the Tesla through a giant puddle of water. You know, trying to get the shot. And we did drive through the puddle very easily and successfully.
It's not a puddle, man.
I know. I like to say
lake.
puddle because it's funny. It was a small. It was a pond. It was a
over the windshield water situation.
And that's the problem, is that I drove through very slowly and cautiously the first time. We watched Graham drive through with his tires that were, taller than the car. And we're like, okay, it's not that deep. So I drove through and it just went so smoothly. I was like, wow, the Tesla just no problem right through that water. But the thing is, we went there to get that shot going through the water, and then we were going to turn around and go through a different section. So I had to drive back through the water. And on the way back through, I was so confident from the time before, and everybody was shooting it coming back through. So I was like, oh, it'll look really cool. If I go a little faster, we'll have a little more of a wave. It'll be like, a really cool shot. And the water was so deep, it was coming over the hood and halfway up the windshield from the bow wave, like surging over the front of the car. And the Tesla made it all the way through the water, and it pulled just out up onto the sand, and then it died.
Kaboosh.
Then it was a brick line. It was, I did, and then I did slackline because we towed it out with.
Did a picture of it in the lake ever get in the magazine?
I think that was in
There's
Car and
a
Driver.
picture of the water, like.
Yeah, but that was just like a big puddle. Is that the actual lake, though?
Yeah. Oh, well, the one of it splashing, that was a puddle. You're right. No, I think there's one of it in the lake. Because that was part of his story, is that like we were trying to do this thing and then we
Shrek'd it.
Failed. And then we sat there for many hours trying to fix it and talking to Ryan, the Tesla engineer guy that we'd met the day before, or the week before at King of the Hammers. Yeah. And he gave us all sorts of ideas of things to try, but in the end it was just a brick.
That's the only time that I'm glad I was the support vehicle. That was amazing, because their experience, they're like, we had to share like rations out next to a train track, man. And I was like,
we did take a nap out there because one of Graham's guys that works for him went and got us food, and
it was more In and Out, wasn't it?
I think it was.
It was In and Out.
It was In and Out, unfortunately. But I mean, at the time we were really hungry, so it wasn't. But he went to get jumper cables mainly because there was a theory that the 12-volt battery on the Tesla had failed from the water. Yeah. And the theory was if we jumpered it from a regular car, it might wake back up.
Teslas are picky about the 12 volts. So is that the last big trip with the truck?
No.
You remember
because we did the Unimog. We did the Unimog trip. With the Unimog was its last trip, and that wasn't a super big one. But there was also picking up the Ranger. That was probably his last.
Tell the story of picking up the Ranger. I like how you tell that story.
Well, I mean, that was a long time ago.
That was like, that was actually, that would have been, that was before King of the Hammers. That was between, that was right after Holly High Voltage.
Hear it, Will.
Well, basically, we had to lie to get a U-Haul, and I have a couple videos of me lying. I've filmed myself lying to the U-Haul places before because it's funny.
We didn't have to lie at all. We just told them we were getting a Ford Ranger.
Yeah, we didn't tell them it had like military axles and stuff.
We didn't tell them it was a 6x6, but they didn't ask, did they?
Yeah. So
we weren't lying. We were just leaving out important information.
We tell these people a white lie. We get the trailer in Seattle, right?
Tacoma, I think.
Tacoma, yeah. So we drove all the way down there, picked up a trailer, drive to this man's house, and this guy has like, he's really weird. He was trying to get a hold of me, or he was getting a hold of me at Holly High Voltage. Remember? That's where we found
it. Yeah, that's what we were eating breakfast with Rich from Rich Rebuild.
His first time talking on the phone with this guy, he hangs up and he's like, "Nope, not gonna happen. This guy's not gonna sell us his truck."
You guys were like really into it, and I called him, and he was like so janky, and I was like, "This man, we're never getting this truck."
And he did actually not want to sell it. He tried to buy it back from us immediately.
Well, we got there, and he was like, as we're signing the paperwork and giving him cash, he's like, "Yeah, I don't know if I want to sell it." I'm like, "Man,
we have the title, man.
We just finished signing the title." Like,
so he had like on our test drive, this man drove us through a neighbor's yard into the trees, broke our tail light.
Yeah, broke the tail light out on a tree.
He's like, that's like me essentially like taking.
Was he just rear steering through the woods?
Yeah, he was like, watch this.
Yeah, and then he backed into, or he hit a tree with the tail light.
Yeah, he's like,
and then just cruises into this what we think is just like someone's yard, his neighbor, turns out it's like his daughter's house or something. So like, but
So
Still,
we
he
just
wrecked his
like
daughter's
under
house
her
with a truck.
clothesline, like
we were like, oh my god,
like what the devil? And this guy lives in like a pretty nice house.
Oh,
and he's,
very
like,
nice house. Yeah.
There's like excavators and stuff, and cool things that you would have.
Yeah.
And now he calls me every single month asking to buy that car back.
Well, he's going to be excited because we are going to sell it.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well,
that's
he's
what
gonna
I heard.
bid on the auction.
there will be
You
an
should just-
auction
dude,
soon.
Tell him about the auction. He'll bid so high to get that truck
Yeah,
back.
I'll tell him like right when the auction goes on live,
Yeah.
and I'll be like, "Hey, look, you can get this truck back."
That was one of the sketchier. It's nowhere near. It's not particularly close to the sketchiest time that I was towing with that
was
truck, but it
the
was the
sketchiest
second
time for
sketchiest
me.
time towing. Because we put that 6x6 on a U-Haul trailer, and it is a whole axle longer than a normal car.
So it was hanging
So
off.
the ramps on U-Haul trailers slide into it, and so we just slid the ramps out for the rear axle to sit on. So if you know anything about trailer weight distribution, that's really bad. Because
Really bad.
we were going like 35 on the little curvy road to get back to the highway, and it was like speed wobbling at that speed. So at that point, we took the box of spare parts, which was a large box, and we strapped it all the way. We took it from the bed of the Ranger, where it had been, all the way to the tongue of the trailer, and ratchet strapped it down to the tongue of the trailer. And we took the tailgate off. Like we took every bit of weight we could get from the
did
back
kinda
and
help.
strapped it to the front. It helped
I remember
immensely.
you sent me a video at a gas station, and you were like removing the tailgate and
Yep.
putting it on the tongue and all this stuff. I was like, what the heck are they even
Yeah.
doing? There was like
Well-
a box of weird
Yeah.
spare parts, and you were like scooting up the
Yep.
box, and I was like, how is it so jank that moving the box of spare parts
It
is
made an
changing?
enormous
It
difference.
allowed
but
us to go like 65.
55, 60, yeah. 60 was pretty sketchy. It started speed wobbling at
Yeah, it
60.
was terrifying.
Yeah, the whole trailer would just shimmy. And
Which is
that
what
was
you want. Speed wobbles on a loaded trailer.
with a 6x6 Ford Ranger on it, yeah.
it's horrifying.
And we
man.
drove just like 20 hours straight, too. We didn't sleep.
Nope.
Just drove nonstop.
If I didn't know how many sketchy situations you put yourself in, I really would feel bad now after this podcast.
Will
from
loves those
how
trips.
I
sketchy.
love trips.
Yeah,
like
every
that.
time we
It's
do
all
it-
he wants to do.
Because it's always Will and I doing these like
Really
super
weird-
long road trips to pick up weird stuff. And
Yeah.
every time Will just like absolutely loves it.
Yeah, I love
And I mean,
picking up.
I've
tank
learned to do
machines.
less sleep deprivation. Like when we bought the golf cart,
Yeah.
Yeah,
we were
you
like,
guys
we're just going to
slept.
sleep. It's not worth
That
it
was
driving all night.
great.
And that was amazing.
Did Will actually sleep though?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He
Oh,
slept
yeah.
way more than I did.
We tried a similar thing when we did the eBay Motors shoot at the Rubicon. They were like, "Oh yeah, we'll get the hotel before we
Yeah,
do the
that's
event." But then
because
Will
you
and
were,
I
that's
just,
because you were there.
Yeah.
Oh, Will and I feed off of each
Dude,
other's
when
bad
Will's with
ideas.
just me, he's a lot more responsible.
Uh-huh.
You and Will together are the maximum level of swindly. You're like
Captain
two
Jack.
different frequency waves that create an interference pattern where they just amplify each other and get massively. Yeah, that's you guys. Where like a bridge will just be like woo in the
Yeah.
wind, and then it'll just the bridge will
We
explode
should
because the
save
wind is
that
too strong.
Captain Jack, Cactus Jack story.
Yeah, that's
Cactus
'Cause
Jack.
I don't think you've told your girlfriend about Cactus Jack.
No.
So what I'm thinking is we have her on the podcast when you get back,
I'll
and
tell
then we
her
tell
about
her about
Cactus
Cactus Jack.
Yeah. Well, that's not a truck. I mean, that's your
Exactly.
dad's truck story.
That
So
was-
that's
We'll save
that's
that
different.
for
Yeah.
another time, but
Yep.
remind us in the comments if we go too many podcasts without
Yeah.
telling the Cactus Jack
You
story.
you guys literally would not believe.
Yeah, you guys will
Would
not believe
at all.
jank things happen in small town America.
Yeah, very
that is
crazy.
all I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean that pretty much covers most of the trips we did in that truck, at least all the memorable ones. And then the last one was picking up the Unimog, where it barely made it home.
Barely. We
Yeah,
like
that was another jank pickup, though. I remember editing that video, and I'm
Yeah.
like, this guy's just janking the Unimog through the trees.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's
We
just
were
like
racing
hopping,
his Unimog friend, and they're like,
racing
we're
Unimogs.
like going like 20 miles an hour, and I feel like we're like in some severe like war film or something with this guy.
There's two types of buying things, I think, is how it works out. So if you're buying a car that's supposed to be kind of nice, you show up, the person's going to have it freshly washed, like covering stuff up, like, trying to get the best price possible. When you're buying grind hard projects, they want their last chance to use it before giving it to you.
It certainly seems that way. Yeah, the
does,
Unimog guy didn't want to sell it either.
To sell it,
Yeah.
not because they want to sell it, because these are custom crafted machines. This man put a minivan on a Unimog chassis, and that is exactly what he wanted. And
Well,
he
didn't. He actually bought it that way. Weirdly,
Really?
Yeah. He bought it with the minivan already on it.
So much. He was like, I couldn't really afford a real Unimog, so I bought this van Unimog.
Yeah, he was like, yeah, I'm moving into an apartment, so I can't keep it because there's nowhere to park it. Like it was. I mean, that was actually kind of sad.
I felt really bad.
Yeah, I
for
felt
them.
bad. Like he had to sell it. The Ranger guy, like, I don't know why he sold it if he didn't want to, because like he did not need the money.
Yeah. It was a lifestyle for them. They're like, me and my family use our Unimogs to build dirt fences around our property so people can't see us. And I was like, oh, that is sad. Like,
that man didn't have a family, but other than that, it was a fairly accurate story.
I mean, he had kind of a family that, like,
his roommate,
other Unimog.
Did you realize that guy's, it was his roommate? They both had Unimogs. One of them was that was a FLU 419. The one with the excavator and stuff on it. But that was his roommate.
Yeah. So
I bet they got along great.
They clearly did.
They did. They built dirt fences.
Yep. He had a altercation with his neighbor, so he just built a giant berm of dirt all the way around so nobody could.
They like complain.
I remember when Will got back the day, like, I hadn't seen the Unimog yet, but I'd already talked to Will about it somehow. And I was like, oh yeah, how was that? And Will was like, you would not believe, man. It was, this man built a reverse moat with his Unimog. I was like, what's a reverse moat? You're like, like a sound barrier. A sound barrier. I'm like, well, what happened? Because I'm like, I didn't know that his neighbor had one with the
the backhoe thing. Yeah.
And so I was like, this man built a reverse moat with a minivan Unimog. I was like, that sounds premium, dude.
Yeah.
And I was like, he's like, yeah, you need a ladder to get into it and all this stuff. And he was like, I was in the back and the propane tank was ratchet strapped to the back of the minivan, but I wasn't, man. I was getting knocked all around the back of this minivan, so I didn't really film that much. And then I was like, what do you mean? And then I saw the footage and it's like, bam, bam. I'm like, Will actually getting tossed and tumbled in the back of a minivan Unimog, holding a camera, just like, yoink, yoink.
Yeah, it's so hard.
Yep, that was pretty entertaining.
That was fun, though.
Yeah.
But the truck barely made it at
Well,
that
and then we
point.
drove it straight to Mountain Mafia because they were having an event that weekend, and we thought it'd be funny to just show up with a Unimog minivan.
Yeah.
But then we didn't stay because Will had like a family emergency thing. Well,
emergency.
girlfriend's family emergency. But yeah. So, and then on the way back from trying to get home from Mountain Mafia is when the truck just barely made it.
Oh.
And that's when I gave up on that. Well, I had already ordered my Tundra at that point, but that's when I just parked it and I was like, I don't care. I'm not putting energy into it. Like, even if I fixed everything, it's worth like a little more. So I just sold it for $1,500 and
on it went.
Well,
and it's still being used.
You got your money out of it.
Yeah.
And the legacy lives on.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I got like 5-6 years of use out of it for $1,700 and never put tires on it.
See,
so
that's the kind of situation I'm trying to get into, but the used car market is fire right now.
not what it used to be.
Way.
Yeah.
Like, people are like, oh,
it's a
that's
dumpster fire.
Yeah, there you go. It's like, oh, this truck is fully Shrek housed and it's got all these Shrek things and it costs almost as much as a new truck.
Yeah.
That's why I bought a new truck instead of a used truck. That's exactly why.
You could just get into
That's exactly why I've been
Subarus.
daily driving a falling apart Tesla for 2 years.
Yep.
Oh, what a legacy.
Yep.
Yeah.
The legacy of the old Chevy.
That
It's
was
so
a premium.
funny going through and just telling all the stories of one vehicle because it really makes me realize that every day that we have is just so jank.
We also skipped over entirely going to Moab with it.
Yeah.
Like, that was
Like every single
there's so many
day
trips.
is just so jank. Like everything is breaking and smashing and crashing and janking.
Well,
and
I mean, we're just always doing extreme stuff with very one-off, untested vehicles.
yeah,
So
I really
like,
want to
it's-
push that to the extreme, though. I feel like we could go a lot harder on that front. Like worse vehicles in even more extreme environments.
Steven and I will be sitting in the nice warm shop
no.
having tea and
and
I don't know,
crafting
donuts
the
or something.
monster chopper.
Crafting the monster chopper
Yeah.
while you and Will are out there doing the miserable things.
I was
Will and
thinking-
I talked about a lot. We're
I was
probably going to say
thinking-
the same thing. We're on the same
Okay.
wavelength like you
Well-
were talking about.
I know what you're thinking, but I was thinking, what if we made like the red car into the limousine, and then we could take them too.
What?
Oh, like
I'll do
2 red
100-mile
cars
trips.
combined.
Yeah.
And then we could do 200 miles with
Yeah,
a double
200
length
miles
red
I don't
car.
think if you made it bigger, we still wouldn't go.
We'd just make it long, and I could use my metal shaping skills that I've been developing and build like a middle
Yeah.
section to it. It'd be amazing.
That would be.
During-
I mean, it would be hilarious to see you make that into a limo. But you know how bad it would be. Think of how bad it already is off road. Now imagine it longer.
Whoa. It is absolutely
You broke the axle in half 4
incredible.
miles into your trip, and then you broke the steering 1 mile after that, and then you broke everything. But 46 miles into extremely easy terrain, you broke the entire car. It's not good off road.
Here's what
It's
you
not
need to do to it
exactly
next.
the lens that I see it
Yeah,
through.
no.
I see it as no other machine could have possibly done what we did to that thing.
Never.
Literally
Ever.
every single machine that we own, other than that, could have done that.
This is what we kind of talked about a lot while
Like
we
if you
were
tried to do that
going.
46 miles in the golf cart, you would have been done in 6 minutes.
Well, okay, I don't think anything would have gone that slow in okay. Let me think
It's all
of
about perspective, honestly.
and the perspective while you're driving that is I can't even believe that this is moving right
Yeah,
now.
yeah,
But
no,
for
I get
30
that
hours
part.
straight.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
That is amazing.
I do get
There's nothing that bad that you could do that terrain with the way
In
that
that.
we
because
did
there's
it.
nothing that bad.
it can go
in
places
existence.
people could barely walk on. We
One
tested
might say
that
not
theory.
even walk.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I fell.
Edwin was slipping, like losing
Yeah.
traction,
Like
and
you
I
wouldn't
was just
believe.
driving right up.
So we became
Convinced.
convinced that the move is to do serious projects sometimes, but then very extreme, very not serious projects the other times, while you're doing very premium projects. Because the
as
little
long
red
as
car-
as long as the ridiculous projects don't become the majority,
Huh?
yeah,
and as long as you guys don't kill yourselves,
Yeah.
Well,
that's
the
fine.
thing. These little jank things from Alibaba take like 6 months to get, so we can only do a handful a year.
Yeah,
but we
that's
always
fine.
need the next one cooking
Yeah.
because it's like we just had so much fun.
So much fun.
If it hadn't been miserable cold winter, like I can see why you guys wanted to do that
I
trip.
think it made it more fun.
it was
Yeah.
more fun.
I don't like. I'm not.
I
into
was
that.
like
I'm-
50-50 on going with you guys, but when I saw how prepared you were, I was like, yeah.
My sleeping
That's
bag
the-
was soaked.
That's the
Brought
thing. Like,
tire
yeah.
plugs and not a tire blower upper
Air.
machine.
No air.
Good job.
You guys should
Exactly.
turn that into a convertible.
Yeah.
Oh, we have better
Yeah,
plans.
better.
Yeah. So are you going to tell us your plans for that now, or is that going to be a different podcast?
No, absolutely.
No, we won't tell you the like full plan, but in the meantime, I'm cruising Alibaba and I found these axles that
Oh
have
yeah, you sent that.
pivots, so you can convert them to front wheel or to 4-wheel drive.
Right.
So I'm thinking we buy 6 of those and make it a premium little 6x6 situation.
You mean you buy 3 of them? 3
Yes.
axles.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
3
we can go
axles. They all
places you
turn.
could not even imagine. Not even.
Well, actually,
climb.
I mean, e-axle 6x6 would be really easy because each axle has its own drive motor
exactly.
built in.
There's
so
no drive lines.
you could
nothing
make it
gets in the
6-wheel
way.
steer too if you really wanted to.
Yeah, that's the idea. But the legacy will not end there. Then in the spring, certain things may occur that
may happen.
would be very nice, and then that is the end of the legacy of the red car.
Well,
It's all very safe and responsible.
it's also all assuming that people actually watch the videos because we haven't released a single video on that yet. So there is a
people
chance.
watching could just
Please
support
watch
us.
the
Please.
videos.
Don't watch the tank
Make
videos.
a playlist.
We
of
don't
the
want
tank
any more
videos,
tank.
100 in a row, and then just leave it playing on like your laptop when you're at work. That
Yeah,
would be much appreciated.
increase our numbers, please.
Yeah, because there's certain things that don't exactly need to be discussed at this stage.
yeah,
that
not
do
at
need
this
to
stage
happen.
of planning.
So
Uh-huh.
Yep.
It always concerns me when you guys talk this way.
Well,
It should.
because sometimes we say ideas, like today at lunch. Hit Ethan with the latest and greatest. No, absolutely not, I believe was the quote. And if we told you our idea for the red car, it would be tenfold
It would
that.
be so much worse.
Our idea is physically possible within the
We've
realm
done
of
our
physics.
calculations.
I don't believe you remotely. I don't believe you even a little bit. Do you remember the watercraft that you tried to build? That would never
I don't think
have floated, and you guys were convinced that it would.
I don't recall, but I
don't
do recall
that.
someone's kid coming up here who was like a 6-year-old who
He
pointed-
was 4.
Yeah, he was 4.
this 4-year-old pointed at our watercraft and he's like, "What's that?" And what did he say? Well, you're like, "Oh, it's our."
I was like, oh, that can drive on the land and the water. And he was like, oh, he did not like it at all.
And he said, I don't think it'll float.
Yeah,
like,
I
he's
don't think
4
that'll
and he knows it
float.
won't float.
Well,
It would float by itself.
And I
but no
tried
one-
to explain to him, I was like, well, you see, like, the tubes will, like, float in. And he was like, there's not enough tubes there to float.
I know.
And I was like,
That
oh,
made my
no.
day because I did the rough calculations, and with the weight of a medium-sized rider, you would have needed like 37 more feet of the tubes for it to float.
37 feet more.
Yeah. That's what I'm telling you. You guys do your quote-unquote calculations, but they're based on unicorn math. It's not real math.
Well, I've seen a kid floating on one of those on the internet, so I thought we could easily make something that
We
would
gotta
float.
put that picture up because when you showed me that, Will, you had me convinced that Edwin showed you that picture.
No, I showed Edwin
That's
that
the other
picture.
thing. When your guys' plans go horribly wrong, nobody will take credit for it. You're both like, oh well, that was Will's fault.
Well-
That was Edwin's fault. Edwin just didn't.
Did we not describe this on the podcast before?
What?
I guess we haven't, have we?
Oh, your terrible watercraft thing.
Yeah,
This
the
is
watercraft's
what happened.
very cool.
This
We
is
had
this is
that
when I had
exact
surgery,
Okay.
and I was.
Well, now you have Will and I together. We'll give it to you straight. It is a collaboration of bad ideas.
All the ideas, like the 24-hour challenge, they're
Yeah.
all our ideas.
Ethan
Yes.
was going on vacation, and that's when we do our dumbest ideas because we can get away with it without anyone telling us that it's so dumb we shouldn't do it.
Uh-huh.
And so that go-kart right there, Will already had. I was like, let's put big tires on that mamma jamma so it floats, and then it'll be the amphibious go-kart video,
Yep.
which I don't think you would have had a problem with. You would have let us do that.
No, I wouldn't have had a problem with that. But you would have needed dramatically
Really
bigger
big.
tires, and they wouldn't actually fit on that. And I mean, there's problems with it, but I wouldn't.
Yeah, we'd basically space it out and put it on like Honda Odyssey size tires is what I was thinking. Rear tires.
You'd need a lot bigger than that.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
well,
what
then
I
it
said.
would've sunk.
And
Yeah.
that's what I
Yeah.
said.
So
I
then
said
Will-
we're gonna put this in the water and it's gonna
No.
sink, and I don't want it.
That is not what you
Yes,
said.
that's what
this is
I
where I'm
said.
getting ya. This is what he told you that he didn't actually say.
What did I
Will
say?
said, I don't want to get that go-kart in the water because it's premium and I don't want it to rust.
That's fair.
That is what you said. You
Yeah.
didn't say that my idea wouldn't work. You said that you didn't want to crust our premium
Yeah,
go-kart.
because I said it would just probably not, like, it will probably just
Or it would
draft
get
down
wet.
into the water and get wet. Yeah.
Yeah, but he did not think it would sink. So he sent me a picture of a disabled child on a Home Depot raft that's a bunch of plumbing pipe. He was floating on the raft. It was like thin plumbing pipe. It was like, what if we build a custom craft with the Grom engine that had bigger plumbing pipe? And then I was like, yeah, it could be like build your own amphibious go-kart at Home Depot. I saw the title, the thumbnail.
Yeah.
We were going to buy a kiddie pool and then put the go-kart floating in the kiddie pool in the Home Depot parking lot. And then once I had the thumbnail in my head, you can talk me into anything
Yeah.
if it looks good on a thumbnail.
So I will admit,
But
I
then
did
we-
talk this man into doing this. Once he had it in his
Dude,
head.
when I got back, Will made it seem like the entire thing was your idea, and he just didn't want to be part of
Ethan
it.
was like, Ethan was so mad. He was like, what is this? And I was like, I don't know.
I wasn't so much mad as I just could not believe that you had built something that bad.
that we wasted a week,
Oh,
basically.
like you spent an entire week building the worst thing I've ever seen. And not only that, but you guys also used up every single piece of like 1/8-inch steel we had to make 2 wheel adapters.
I will post a picture. We weren't going to share this publicly I will post a picture of it on our Instagram when this podcast comes out.
It's
Oh
no! Steven and I joke about this stuff a lot, and Steven was texting me while I was recovering from surgery, and he's like, "Dude, I don't want to, make you too worried, but you will not believe how bad this thing is." He's like, "It is so much worse than you can imagine."
I wanted to set the scene that way when Ethan got here and it wasn't the worst thing that he imagined.
And you guys were
like,
keeping it all secret, and then I get home and it's just in the middle of my driveway, so I can't even park my truck in the middle of my driveway. I'm like,
it
really?
broke down over there.
No, it didn't. It was on jack stands. It weighs 100 pounds. You got to push it into the shed. They're being all secretive, but they had it out there in the middle of the driveway so that the silicone would dry. That he'd like halfway waterproof the wiring harness with.
The thing is, I think Steven was always concerned because we were going to surprise Steven on camera.
I figured it out in Home Depot. As soon as you guys started buying that sewer pipe, I was like, oh no.
And we wanted that moment on camera. So we didn't tell Steven what we were doing. Mm-hmm. And I think he was going with the flow and he was like open to ideas. And he was like, oh yeah, like maybe it'll be a fun week. Like, who knows, I think things are pretty more reasonable when Ethan is here.
Yeah.
But the second we started pulling off the plumbing pipe, Steven's mood was like, Zhoo.
I knew exactly what was going to happen at that point. I was like, they're going to make a go-kart that can drive on water.
But remember, this is when I lost faith in Steven's math. And this is when I went full steam ahead with our math. Because Steven was doing math, and it was just me and Steven.
Yeah, you told.
And, like, I was, like, kind of upset because something was happening or something. I don't know. And
You were having just life problems.
I was, like, having life problems, and I was, like, having, like, a mental crisis about this machine because I was, like, upset about it. Like, why is this thing? Because I had let it park for a little while, and it started bending into a banana. And I was, like, really upset.
Because the 4-inch ABS was going to be the chassis of this thing. Everything's bolted to two pieces of 4-inch
and
ABS
the flex
pipe.
of the ABS was going to be the suspension.
Yeah. And I'm the only person who's driven it. It drives like a Cadillac, man. It drives nice.
You got it to drive for about 3 minutes max.
Yeah,
I think we have to make a video and release it now.
Absolutely not.
But anyway,
the thing should never see the light of day.
Steven came up with a mathematical equation telling me that if I did a really good job and welded up all these tubes,
that the subframe would float.
The subframe would float.
Yes, you told me this too,
and
and
we
I said no.
filmed it, and I'm putting it in the water, and it just sank so quickly. And that's
you didn't add the tubes that I told you needed to.
No, Steven was like, if you just weld this frame into a square and it's very watertight.
Then technically it should have enough area.
Volume.
And so I was so excited to show you. I'm like,
yeah.
look, I have this square.
Yeah.
It's welded nice. And I put it in the water and it was like, boom.
Join.
Yeah.
I was like, no.
I do remember that, actually. Yeah.
Okay.
Then I went full steam.
I get that you lost faith in Steven's math at that point.
Yeah.
But if you'd had one brain cell of logic, you would have realized his math was wrong in the wrong direction for what you did. He was wrong about us. He said this will float, and it didn't. And then you took something that he said that won't float using the same math, and you were like, nah, it'll float.
Oh man.
When your square of steel tube that Steven said it should float based on my math sank like a stone, you're like, well, this thing made out of plastic that's used the same math that you said isn't even close to floating. It's fine. Just send it.
I was, even after the subframe sank, I was like, okay, all we need to do is add more Home Depot tubes until it floats. But then I didn't come for one day because I had to edit the video. And when I arrived back on Friday, you had mounted the motor
underneath the watercraft.
Underneath the watercraft. Couldn't even believe. Because I was like, this is only a bad idea that's gotten worse. But
it was so
what
bad.
made you want to put the motor underneath the boat part?
Because I'm pretty sure the day before I had to leave early because I was taking care of something. And then I came back the next day and I was like, okay, I'm going to work late on this project, and I was like, man, I don't like this project anymore. And I was like, I want to get it to at least drive on the ground. So I just like
you focused on it driving on the ground and didn't think about it floating.
It being the watercraft. So I was like, okay.
And this was probably like 2 a.m. or something.
It was late, and I had the motor mount from the Grom, and I held it up by myself and like put a tack on it, and it kind of like leaned forward deeper than I wanted it to, and I was like, it's in the spot that the universe made it. And so I just welded it strongly to that tube, put a chain on it, and that somehow also didn't work because...
Yeah. Let's do it, man. Next time Ethan goes on vacation, we'll finish.
We'll
finish the watercraft.
I can't. That watercraft...
It's going to be December next time I leave, so...
I've got a 5 mil wetsuit and a hood. Plus, it's going to float.
I mean...
I like, a lot of people that know me are concerned for my life and think that I do really sketchy stuff. And I have done a lot of sketchy stuff in my life. I'm pretty sure you guys want to die in the stupidest way known to man. Like, that seems like it's your life goal, is to just die doing the dumbest thing you can think of.
I have a good explanation for this.
I mean, I get that those things are fun, but like, how do you get past the part where like, yeah, we're going to build a watercraft that doesn't float and then drive it into the lake in December? How do you get past the part of thinking that maybe you might get hypothermia or frostbite?
I don't want to continue with that situation, but I have been thinking.
Yeah, because that Grom engine barely runs at all, let alone in the water. It will not run. Like,
I have been thinking of a way that we could float so much better, and we could easily make it out of things you could find at home.
You know what I
find?
find?
This idea too, but first I would like to say where these swindly ideas come from. So, when you think about your life and you think about what you want to do in the future of your life, maybe this is not the way you think, but I think of when are the best moments of my life, and then you would want to do more of those.
Yeah.
But where I'm broken is my favorite parts of my life are always the closest I was to dying for the dumbest reason.
Yeah.
And so,
I mean, there's something to be said for being close to death, and that's an experience. Like I do have that experience. You know, free soloing, rock climbing, like drifting Subarus on icy roads in the mountains, you know, like that kind of stuff. I get that. And like,
but do you think back like those are peak? That's the highlight of my life. Or do you think,
no, I mean, not the highlight, but they're definitely like very, like, I'm like, yeah, that was a really good time. Or like, you know, like when we broke the Tacoma in the middle, or like as it was getting dark in Moab, and like, you know, that was really fun. But like, to me, it's not fun if, like, it's not as much fun if it's intentionally stupid and if you're incredibly underprepared.
That is what makes,
you know, when stuff just happens and it just goes wrong and like you have to figure it out. I enjoy that. You're like, oh shoot, everything went wrong. Like I was driving my Subaru on basically a four-wheeler trail in Canada. I ripped the radiator off trying to drive through a river and then got 2 flat tires like 100 kilometers out on a dirt road, and then had to like drive back and fill my radiator with swamp water and drive along the highway with just on the rim for like, I don't know, another 100 kilometers. That was a really awesome time. But I would never, like, that just happened because I got a little too excited about driving my Subaru and thought it was a Jeep.
But you would never plan a trip.
I would not intentionally do that.
Again.
And because I prefer to do a trip that's extreme, but the intention is to do it well. And things always happen. You don't need to plan stupidity. You don't need to plan failure, because if you try your best for success, you have a pretty high chance of failure, especially if you're in like extreme, ridiculous machines. And then you enjoy that when it happens. Like King of the Hammers was miserable in a lot of ways, like we talked about earlier. I had a great time. That whole trip was awesome to me. Like, there were parts I would do differently if I did it again, but that misery was very enjoyable. But if I did it again, I would plan it so there was less of that. Like, I like to, like, it's...
See, for me, it's like a different mindset. It's like, what is the most jank thing I could do today let's do that.
Yeah, I see that.
Because there's a lot of days where it's like, okay, I'm responsible, like I got to edit the videos and I got to do this and I got to do that and edit the podcast and I got to film this ad or I got to approve the premium hoodie design and like reply to emails. I can be like that. But if I'm in my natural state, I would call it, like just my Edwin zone, that is just pure chaos.
And I'm so
like,
is Will.
Like today.
That's why we call you the Swindle Brothers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like this weekend, I was doing wheelies in the rain and it was pouring like this so much. I just got my glasses, both sides of my glasses caked in rain, no lights on my bike, just wheeling through the roads of Sandpoint in the dark. And I was like, this is the most jank thing that I could be doing right now. And it's the best. I was just in jeans and a hoodie, soaking wet, so premium. And then that night, I was like, I'm going to do this every day, rain or shine, until I can wheelie across the Long Bridge.
There you go. That doesn't even sound like a terrible time. Like, it sounds a little chilly, but, wheelies in the rain, that
sounds ideal. It's just I would have a raincoat.
Yeah, exactly.
But see, that ruins the fun.
It doesn't, though. Not for 99% of people.
Also, what might ruin our fun is that memory card that's almost full.
Oh, yeah. We have been going for a very long time.
Over 2 hours.
Yeah.
Well, what were you going to say then? Because I stopped you so I could tell my mindset thing. But you said you know how to make a floating craft. So we'll just try to get that out real quick.
I won't explain it now, but I think I have a more simplistic design that definitely will float. I realized that, displacement of water is what we need.
That is, yeah.
So
you don't necessarily need, that is what you need.
To make a displacement tank.
So such a good idea, you don't want to say it on the podcast,
No,
or
it's
such
just
a bad idea?
It would be hard to explain it. I probably need to draw it. I've been having a lot of good ideas. I've been drawing my ideas, so I'll have a list of them. when I come to ground.
Nice.
But yeah.
The funniest thing to me about that watercraft is that the steering is the best steering wheels ever built for something that
that's how it goes. The front of the car was designed first.
Yeah, the steering on that is buttery smooth and the angle. It's decent steering. I mean, you use some parts from other stuff, but it's pretty solid. And then
I think it looks cool too. It looks like a chopper.
It's the worst thing I ever did make.
It looks pretty
even
cool.
Will says it. No,
looks
Edwin,
pretty
no
cool.
one on earth will agree with you that
I
it looks
just
cool.
like jank machines.
You do.
You
do. That's true.
It's like the more swindly and jank, the happier I am. So,
well,
I guess we'll just leave it at that.
There you go.
Right. We were going to do the Q&A that I posted, but I guess we'll have to do that yet another week from now.
I guess so.
Q&A coming up next week on the Set and Bent podcast. It's available wherever you download podcasts. We're coming out every Monday on all of those platforms, and then Wednesdays on YouTube. So we'll keep doing that for a while. Peace.
See ya.